The broadcast is live.
Yay.
And we do not have Daisy tonight. We have Tim from his phone.
The only difference is I'm hairier.
Your voice is different since you've got a different mic.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I hope
Yeah.
I'll just have to watch, see if that's a good thing or a bad thing later.
Yeah, your voice isn't as strong.
You must have got contact lenses too.
Wait a minute. And, it's also way down here. How's that?
Hey, baby.
Hey, what's up? But anyway, speaking of my voice, which is kind of funny, I'm gonna be spinning the whole thing like
just let it down. Don't move. When you move it around, it makes crinkle noises. Just leave it where it is.
Gotcha. Cool. But I had to go up to Northern Virginia, and you have to understand that's like 5 hours away from where I live.
Yeah.
Once you get about 2 hours past here, the whole world changes. Two different states, actually. Yeah. So I get up there, and there's people I haven't seen in 2 years. I have a client up there, didn't have the client, and then pandemic hit, and now I have the client again. So I go up there to this institution he lives at, and for a minute I wasn't exactly flattered. I was suspicious. I was like, how do they remember me? I was like, I don't remember them, And then they started talking, and I'm like, well, I might remember you. So I'm in a room after the meeting, and they think I've left. You have to be walked out of the place, and they put in numbers. You have to be escorted in and out by somebody that works there. Two of the people in the meeting think I'm gone. They're right outside the doorway while I'm still talking to this other person, and they're like, it's so weird hearing him, sound, know exactly what he's talking about with that accent. So apparently I'm a contradiction. You know what I mean? Like
I worked customer service for years and years and did, on the phone. People that live in Massachusetts and Connecticut seem to have this delusion that they can discern what part of the country what part of the South you're from based on your accent, and they can't do it.
Never.
They have no idea between a Northern Virginia accent, the South Carolina accent. They think it's all the same.
I say it over and over. You have to explain to them that Appalachian, Cumberland Mountains is not the South.
South, right now.
Okay, it's a whole different beast.
Huzzah, David McKee.
Yeehaw.
Yeah, living in the New York City area, I hear so many accents. I just kind of accept all of them. I don't know who's from where. I don't know what's from what. That's why on TV, when I hear someone say, "Oh, such and such actor is using such a bad accent," I'm like, sounded okay to me.
And it's funny how everybody's accents disappear when they sing.
Yeah. Well, not always. People don't realize that a lot of English people would sing. Do you remember when Green Day came out?
Unfortunately.
And a lot of people were getting down on them. They're singing in this fake English accent. I'm like, you don't blame the Beatles for singing in a fake American accent.
Right.
As their accents don't disappear. It's just that they were singing rock and roll, which is sung in American accent, so that's how they sang it. Green Day was singing punk rock, and they were influenced by the British punk rockers, so that's how they were singing it. But it's like I never once have heard anyone, put down the Beatles for singing an American accent. And I'd point that out to people who were putting down Green Day, and they'd always get angry with me.
Green Day was a band where I'd heard their sound before. And I'm spending I like the first big album, Dookie or whatever, But I was like, they sound like somebody else. And it was killing me because I spent a year or two kind of looking at punk CDs or tapes, whatever I could find, trying to I know I have them here. And then all of a sudden High Fidelity came out around 2000, that movie. And they're like, they sound like Sticky Little Fingers. And I was like, you son of a bitch. I was like, that's them. I had 2 songs on a mixtape, and I'm like 6 years of trying to bust them, and I seeing in a movie,
No, I until I was 9 or 10, I had no idea that Rod Stewart was Scottish.
Yeah.
However, the Proclaimers are very Scottish.
Right.
Yeah, the Proclaimers. I could see that. Yeah.
The Irish don't lose their Irish accent when they're singing Irish music. The chieftains sound very Irish.
Right.
Because they're singing Irish. It's just people don't seem to realize that the influence that U.S. pop music has had around the world. That when people sing it, they sing it like their heroes sing it, which is in an American accent. Except for Green Day, who got made fun of for it.
I can think about
that's one of those things I like to point out to people that just gets them mad at me.
I didn't really turn on Green Day. I mean, I haven't really turned on them, but I have no enthusiasm for it since they ripped off the Kinks. I mean, you do that, I'm like,
I really enjoyed that big hit album they had, Dookie, whatever however you say it. But I never really listened to them after that. Here and there.
Bringing up the Kinks, that's one of the bands that doesn't get enough credit. Like, people talk about the big influential groups in the 60s, like, the Beatles and Stones and Zeppelin and whatnot. Damn, the Kinks were something else.
It goes Beatles, Stones, The Who, and then you got the Kinks down here. And the people who know the Kinks, in my opinion, that's when I give, to me, that's validation of your music knowledge. It really is. And we're going to talk about the British invasion.
They're a little bit forgotten these days.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen all those YouTube channels now about people listening to songs for the first time?
Oh, there's hundreds of reaction channels.
There's so many of them now.
A bunch. Some of them are good and some of them are not.
It's funny you say that because I watched 2 of them and then a third one popped up in my feed and it's a lady listening to Luca. My name is Luca for the first time. So I'm sitting there, she cries, and then I look at her list, and I'm like, have you never had a TV in 30 years? You've heard these damn songs, I don't buy it. I don't know,
man.
Well, I
do. People that are probably in their 20s, do not listen to complete albums.
The lady was not in her 20s. This lady was my age.
Okay,
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Listen to
maybe she was songs.
But the concept of listening to a complete album is foreign to them, and it's foreign to me not to listen to music that way.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll back up. But I think if you're a certain age,
Also, if you're in your 20s, you don't remember MTV playing music.
Yeah.
I'm in my 50s, and I hardly remember when MTV actually played music.
It was so long ago.
Exactly. Yeah, it's been a long time ago.
MTV played music. Those were good times. I don't care what anybody says.
One day now you get Madonna for 24 hours.
Now you can get on Pluto TV, and they got 70s Vivo, 80s Vivo, 90s Vivo, and 2000, and they play the same videos in chunks. So if you see a set today, tune in about 2 days later, you'll see it again.
How many?
So you want to see the worst Swamp Thing creative team, in my opinion, now that I've really got to delve into them?
Yeah, let's see. Who is it?
The best instead.
I haven't read Swamp Thing in so long, I wouldn't know.
Well, I've been wanting to get this one because I've actually found the second arc. It was 3 trades, and I've got bits and pieces of it. But this is before Mark Millar was Mark Millar. This is when he was still Grant Morrison's little buddy. You'd see Grant Morrison with Mark Millar, and then Grant would stick around and Mark would come up. But I finally really delved into them taking over the Swamp Thing, and it's no fucking wonder that they turned around and canceled it. I got all 3 trades of. I have all 3 trades of their Swamp Thing run now. Grant Morrison hung around for 4 or 5 issues, and Mark Millar probably lasted around enough for 3 trades, writing his story. And he just got outrageous. He just took everything with Swamp Thing as far as he could,
Who's drawing it?
Phil Hester and Kim DeMolder. Kim DeMolder is this underrated inker just for how long he's been around and what he's done. He's worked with Morrison and Doom Patrol, Vertigo. He was the Vertigo guy. I met him at Heroes Con in the late 90s, and he was trying to sell his artwork, and I asked him how he got into comics. He said, well, I wanted something that would pay, and I'd have plenty of time to do my art. So I just walked into DC Comics, and they were like, "Well, here you can work on this." So the guy knocks out the comic, and then he does his artwork, and I respect that. You know, he gives a crap. Cool. He's like, "Give it to me, I'll ink it. I don't care. Here you go." You know, he doesn't try to be Terry Austin. He's just like, "Here's your."
Didn't he ink the Defenders back in the 80s? I have a vague memory of maybe him inking.
He inked the Defenders over Don Perlin.
Okay.
Him and Hart Nichols.
He just talked about his DC days. He just walked into DC. That's exactly what he told me. Maybe he was pulling my leg, but he said I walked right into the DC and.
Well, maybe he went to Marvel after DC. That's.
I know nothing. I just know his Vertigo stuff. You know.
Yeah, I know. I think I just know his Defenders stuff, but I remember his name.
485.
Yeah. Kim DeMulder. I remember him being solid, middle of the road inker.
But both Kim DeMulder and Art Nichols were good enough to disguise the fact that Don Perlin was a Silver Age artist, because that was something I didn't know for decades, that Don Perlin was already in the 60s or 70s when he did the Defenders.
Yeah. I was never a huge fan of his artwork, unless he, like you said, he had a good inker on him, because I knew his stuff from the 70s, I think it was. But if you look at his Western stuff, matter of fact, he was the guy who I once had an art teacher say that every artist has a scale. Meaning that there's a size you like to work at, and there's a size you're best at. And when the boards went down from 2 times up to 1.5 times up, which meant which was like 1965 or 66 or something, all the art used to be done on 16 by 20 pages. And then they found out I forget who it was. Maybe it was Murphy Anderson. I can't remember. Figured out that instead of making 3, they used to be able to get, like, you'd have to make negatives and stats on this paper. Instead of at 16 by 20, you could get 3 sheets. You can get 3 negatives out of that big negative sheet. At 11 by 17 or /10 by 15, you could get 4. So all of a sudden, your printing costs in that part were cut by a quarter. So soon Marvel and DC both did that. They both all of a sudden, went from 16 by 20 to 11 by 17 paper. And it was John Romita told me he thought some guys didn't survive that too well. They just weren't as good at drawing smaller as they were bigger. And he said Don Perlin was one of those guys. If you look at his stuff before the size got smaller, it was actually better. And I always found that interesting because, and I went back, I have some old Marvel stuff with his Westerns in it, and they are nicely drawn.
When I saw his stuff at Valiant in the 90s, my mind sort of went the other way. Like, I didn't think he was actually looking for work or whatever, his style was out of date. But to me, it gave him like, some kind of validity, because I watched the documentary and the behind the thing. Scott probably watched this too, of Ralph Bakshke's Wizard. And they brought in an animator from the 40s and 50s that worked on Tom and Jerry. He was like a legend. And he said when he brought him in, he thought it was going to juice everybody up. Everybody froze. Like, oh no, everybody stopped animating because they were intimidated by the guy. And in my mind, in my 20-year-old mind or whatever, I was like, I was picturing that being Don Perlin, because he'd been around for so long. I went the exact opposite.
I knew Don Perlin briefly when I first started at Marvel in 1990. He was the assistant art director to John Romita, but then he got hired by Valiant to be their art director. So I think I only knew him for a few months even, and I can't remember exactly when he started, but he was a nice guy. Still is, I guess. I think he's still around.
No,
Don Perlin, big guy.
He was born in 1917.
Wow.
Whoa. That means he was like, okay, yeah.
He was he's not still around, is he?
He is. Don Perlin is still around.
He's still around?
Yeah, although right now the oldest living Golden Age artist, I think, is what was his name?
So Don Perlin is over 100?
He's 104?
No, he's still in his 90s.
Did you say 1917?
17, I think.
No, it couldn't be 1917. He'd be over 100.
He'd be 104.
No, wait, no, that's not possible. No,
1927, maybe.
What was bad is here's the guy I'm thinking is 104 after Paolo said that, and I like shut my mouth because I was like, that means he was working how old? And I was like, that was 30 years ago at Image, and it made me feel old.
No, I think the oldest guy still living is Al Jaffe.
1929.
Yeah,
there we
go.
go.
There.
Wow. I think that's when Abe Vigoda was born. But anyway, I was like,
Yeah.
Don Perlin has outlived Abe Vigoda.
Huh.
So,
Who else did I see was still alive? Sid Jacobson, who I worked with briefly at Marvel. He was the Star Comics editor at Marvel, but he also goes back to Dell, Gold Key, Harvey. And I think it's Harvey. He was an editor at Harvey Comics in like the 50s.
wow.
And I think he's still around too.
That explains Warren Kramer working for Star Comics.
Yeah, that explains it. He was his editor back at Harvey.
Jules Pfeiffer's in his 90s now.
Wow.
Cool.
And Al Jaffe's exactly 100 years old.
I'm sitting here trying to think. I remember seeing a picture in 1935, and it looks like a cafeteria to a school. And I swear it was Al Jaffe as a kid and some other guy that ended up working with him at MAD.
It's not Al. It's two other guys that work for MAD, and I can't remember which two they
Is
are.
it Harvey Kurtzman?
And
I just read it too. They both went to the
picture. Yeah, I know that. I know what
they both went to the High School of Arts.
Yeah, they're making funny faces.
They look like little kids. Yeah, they're making funny faces. And I saw it in the 90s, and it amazed me because MAD wasn't even an inkling in anybody's mind in the 30s. Yeah. We know that, right? And those two look like they were going to grow up and work at MAD. That's what's great about the picture. Like you look at them and you're like, I bet they work at MAD magazine. You just knew it.
Yeah.
That's what was so cool about. That's what was so cool about the picture. I wish people need to look up that picture, but it wasn't Al Jaffe.
Now,
yeah. I saw it in the 90s, and it did pop up on Facebook somewhere like 2015-ish.
I saw it just recently. I can't remember what I was reading
see if I can find
or watching, but it just popped up when it was something about, maybe it was something I was reading about Kurtzman. I think it was Kurtzman.
Yeah.
Man.
Al Feldstein, was that the other one? I can't remember.
May have been. Feldstein also worked at Marvel in the 40s, didn't he?
Did he? I don't remember that, but I don't know a lot. I don't know a ton about Marvel in the 40s.
No, Al Feldstein wrote for Marvel in the 50s. He wrote Yellow Claw #1 before Kirby took over. Kirby only took over for issue #2.
Okay. The Yellow Claw.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the 60th anniversary of the Fantastic Four.
That's crazy. 60 years. That is crazy. I still remember the 20. I remember the 10. Well, no. 20. I remember the 20 year and the 25 year like they were yesterday.
I've never seen Feldstein's Junior comics. I don't know about them. What anniversary did Byrne do? Was that the 25th?
25th, yeah. It was that cover with all the characters, with the FF surrounded by all the characters.
Well, that was the 20th. The 25th. The 25th had a Barry Winslow Smith cover, and it coincided with when they did the frame covers with all the heroes in the frame. And it was supposedly a Stan Lee and Barry Winslow Smith story, where the Thing got all chummy with the Mole Man. They were buddies. Even Ben Grimm even dressed like him and put on the same shades as Mole Man.
Huh. Yeah, I think the story they're doing for this is Kang and all his incarnations are attacking the Fantastic Four throughout time. So it gives them an excuse to draw the Fantastic Four in all the different decades styles.
Right.
That made me think of something going on with Thor in this Loki show. I'll bring up something in a minute. Yeah.
That just made me think of the two aliens from The Simpsons. And
they should be our mascots. Those two aliens should be our mascots.
That photograph we were talking about was Al Jaffe and Bill Elder.
Bill Elder. Got
Al Jaffe and Bill Elder? Okay.
So it was Al Jaffe in it. I'm good.
Yeah. Let me send you the link to it.
Kang the Conqueror and Ramatut and who else is there? I think there's some other ones. I don't remember.
There's Immortus in the
wasn't
Scarlet
there
Centurion.
Scarlet Centurion? Wasn't there a teenage Kang in the Young Avengers?
Yes.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I had the first issue of Young Avengers. Couldn't give it away. Finally did. And I don't miss it. I don't care that it popped. I'm like,
I think I got the hardcover of Young Avengers for dirt cheap. Like, I don't know, whenever, years and years ago. That may have, now that I think back on it, that may have been the first Jamie McKelvey and who wrote it again? Kieran. Oh, what's his name? The guys who did. All of a sudden, I can't remember anything I read. What do you know about that?
No, the original Young Avengers was Alan Heinberg, and
must have been the one after that. Then the guys who did The Wicked and the Divine.
Right. No, that was after it.
The Wicked and the Divine.
Jamie McKelvey was the artist, and Kieran Gillen was the writer.
I don't even remember Gillen on the Young Avengers, so it was probably.
I think he was. I may be wrong about that. I may be misremembering, but I know Jamie Kelvey was definitely the artist.
Right, because what made the Young Avengers in the first run was Jimmy Chung's art. Because
he did it too.
That was when Jimmy Chung reached maturity as an artist, because I remember him doing fill-ins in the late 90s, and he was one of those guys with a manga influence. But when he did Young Avengers, he could tell a story and set up the action.
Maybe I'm confusing Jamie McKelvey with Jim Chung. I can't remember. I can't even remember now. It's been so long since I remembered it. But I knew Jim Chung from his cross-gen work. I think he did Scion. It was good stuff. Mm-hmm. I enjoyed. That was one of the cross-gen comics I collected, still over there on my shelf. I actually pulled it down and reread it a few years ago. It was solid.
I wish it had popped in my head when I got some of the books I was going to show on my travels. There was actually a box with every issue of Scion on there. Every issue. Yeah. So,
it's a good series.
I'm like,
I think I got rid of my Young Avengers hardcover at some point.
The Young Avengers, it's not that it was horrible. It's just it was derivative, and they were trying to be clever. Once you find out who these people really are and stuff like that, you know what I mean?
It was okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I would readable, but
I wouldn't. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying readable, but nothing you want to keep.
But it's what I mean. It's one of those things I wouldn't tell somebody to read it. I would just be like, don't pay a lot. I mean, you might like it, you might dig it.
I think Heinberg did a good job with the personalities, and the characters were all very likable.
Yeah,
even when they were being assholes, because they're teenagers. And so, and that was before they had this tendency of making every teenager a super genius.
So did they think it Teenage Conan in there to mess things up?
No.
I mean, with a grain of salt, I would say that was probably one of the last series to come out that actually felt like a Marvel book. If that you get what I'm saying, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I'd give it a solid B minus, which is a higher grade than I give most Marvels. That's for sure.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I'm glad. I was like, I didn't want to be the guy to come out here and be like, they suck.
One thing that I noticed is that being the child of a superhero messes you up.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Because Scott Lang's daughter is still 15 years old in the series, and her second boyfriend also wears an armor. Mm-hmm. Because when the Scott Lang was doing technical work for the FF when they thought Reed was dead, they had a puppy love thing with Cassie and Christoph, Doom's son, and Christoph was pretending to be a superhero because he wore his Doom armor, and he went on missions with the team. And then when they found the Young Avengers, Cassie starts dating Iron Lad, who is young Kang, also wearing an armor. So
basically, we had this is like young heroes in love. This is like some kind of young romance superhero, and I can't believe Christoph is still around. I haven't heard about that kid since like maybe 5 years after Byrne left Fantastic Four. That's a while he's still around.
No, Tom DeFalco used him in his FF. Then it disappeared for a while, and then he only had cameo appearances in. Now it's like 1920, and he's kind of immature now for his age.
I thought he was the low point of Byrne's run. I thought Byrne was. That's the point where Byrne was sort of like, I was like, where's he going with this? And it went nowhere. You know, I never in my mind did I think he was going to really stay on top going against Doom. You know what I mean? I was just like, no, this isn't happening.
No, Christoph was a red herring because I don't think he wanted to bring Doom back yet. He needed to do his Secret Wars retcon.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because you remember how Byrne was when somebody messed with his characters. And Doom is supposed to be dead when he appears in Secret Wars. Yeah,
and that was the thing. I remember the issue where it was a big convoluted. I want to give you the timeline real quick about where Doom's at, and he was living in Doom was in suburbia, living in a suburban husband's house, and his wife, and the suburban housewife thought she was nuts. But I love that it was Joe Sennett and John Byrne on that issue. That's the only reason I remember it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Didn't Byrne at some point say that all of the Doctor Doom or a lot of the Doctor Dooms that people fought over the years were Doom bots?
I think your buddy Walt did that in Fantastic Four. I think it was Fantastic Four 350. This Doom just landed and he had silver armor and a big cape, and it was like, it was like grandiose. Mm-hmm. And the way I read the story, I didn't understand it. I'm going to go ahead and tell you I did not understand it. I cannot remember how old I was, but I was still in high school. And I read it and reread it to try to figure out where Walt was coming from. You know what I mean? But the way I understood it, grain of salt, the way I understood it, this was Dr. Doom returning from space when in like Fantastic Four, 7 or 8, Doom took off. He had the Baxter building lift up trying to shoot it into space. And Dr. Doom went out. The way I read it, that was the last time we saw the real Dr. Doom. They've all been Doom bots. Then my mind went to the Superboy, Superman robots back in the day in the Silver Age. I mean, I was just like, what's he doing? It's the only thing that Walt Simonson wrote that I was like, what the hell? What are you saying? Spell it out. I was like, spell it out. What are you saying? Give me a timeline. Give me a date.
Walt left an exit strategy, writing the same dialogue, because when the thing confronts, you mean we've fought Doom bots every time since then? I guess you'll never know. I think it's a good exit strategy for that, because then it makes it ambiguous for everyone, and you can choose which stories are Doom bots or not.
Yeah.
I used to silence a room here on YouTube and stuff because I still hold the last great Doctor Doom story was Secret Wars at the end of it, where he took on the Beyonder, got the power of God and all that stuff. And it would silence the room because I was like, I don't know if people didn't want to challenge me or if they really didn't want to admit I was right because they couldn't think of another great Doctor Doom story.
It's because they couldn't believe anybody thought Secret Wars was a good story.
Fair enough. I liked it.
Yeah, you were young, so you liked it. I was at the age when I was just stopping reading. Marvel comic. So it was terrible to me.
It was a commercial for toys. Of course, I loved it. You know, I mean, and then at the end of it, he gets all man versus God. You know,
reasonable. Doom is not reasonable. No, as a character, I don't
Doom
know
is reasonable. Everyone else isn't. In reading
Comic Shop Weekly last week, Cosmic Doom, I'd read that. And reading Comic Shop Weekly, I noticed they're putting out a new printing, I guess a facsimile, I don't know, of a Treasury edition, Captain America's Bicentennial Battles. I was like, ooh, cool. And DC's done a couple of hardcovers like that, like the Neil Adams Superman Muhammad Ali one, which I got. But I looked at the price on it was like $30. And it doesn't even say it's a hardcover. I'm kind of like, ooh.
For $25 to $30, you can get the original if you dig around a little bit.
And then I said, you know what? Before I buy anything,
actually, for $50, you can get a hardcover of the entire Kirby run.
Yeah.
I'm like, I should check my own shelf. And somebody must have given this to me over the years because I didn't have it when I was a kid, which is where most of my Treasure editions are from.
Yeah. And
I don't know when the last time, I don't remember any of this at all, but I started reading it again tonight. And and in the beginning, he's got this guy called Mr. Buddha in it. And I'm like, did Mr. Buddha ever appear anymore? He's this mystical character.
Now, they probably pulled him some 50s comic or something, you know, just to keep the trademark. Speaking of Captain America, I think this is like a $50 book that was $12.97. Then I used my wife's Books a Million discount card, and it came to be like $11. Wow. But this is all of Alex. This is a tribute, Marvelocity, of Alex Ross's work at Marvel, which is cool. But they actually have a picture of Superman in here, back to back with his Earth X Captain America. But the slipcover is what impressed me. You open it up. Let me see if I can do this without destroying it. And the slipcover just keeps going and going.
Oh, the gatefold.
Of Alex Ross stuff. Yeah. Now let's see if I can do it without destroying the book. So I think they were trying to up the mythology from DC, you know, with what they were doing in there. But this thing just keeps going and going and going. It's like those scarves that the magicians have that they pull out of their mouth. It's good stuff. But I saw that and I just dropped.
Tech, cosmic, magical. He wants to see Doom become Spawn.
Let me tell you something. You know, I know there's Punisher and there's anti-heroes and stuff, but as a kid, Dr. Doom was and we're talking late 70s, early 80s. It was the first time that I saw a villain have fans. My stepdad, all of his buddies, Dr. Doom would stop a room, you know, and then it was like, by the time the 80s ended, it's like Doom was a joke. And I was like, this is not right. It's like I was influenced by those hippies, you know, that were like, you know, they were like, it was like Spider-Man was sacred, but if Doom showed up, Spider-Man would like wet his pants. That's the only thing they agreed on, you know, when it came to those two. I heard the conversation.
My thoughts on anything Bendis is I'm not going to read it. The couple of Bendis things I've read have made me not want to read any Bendis. So I haven't. I've read maybe 3 Brian Bendis written stuff. I read an issue of Powers, didn't like it. Read an issue of Ultimate X-Men, I didn't like it. Read an issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, I didn't like it. And I think I read an issue of Jessica Jones and didn't like it. So those are 4 Bendis issues I read that I'm like, no reason for me to read any more Bendis.
Powers only makes sense if you read the trade.
Yeah, you got to read. Yeah. I've gone on the record pretty hardcore that Bendis needs to stick to writing crime books. I'm not saying they're great, but they're readable. They make sense when he writes that way.
If I pick up a single issue and think it's bad, the last thing I'm going to do is read the trade. Telling me more bad issues are going to make it better is not something I've ever found to be true.
I don't know if
think of it as buying you bought the 12th chapter of a Sherlock Holmes novel.
Yeah, but if the chapter's good, I'll get the other 11 chapters. That's the flaw in it. I have bought the fifth piece to some comic many a time and said, "Oh, this is good," and then gone and tracked down the other pieces. If I pick it and say, "Man, that's bad," I'm not going to track down the other pieces.
He's pretty forgettable now. Nobody, it hasn't been that long, but nobody remembers him on Legion. He completely, that wasn't even a Legion. It's horrible. I mean, I couldn't even get through the 2-issue miniseries they had to lead up to his Legion books, Legion Millennium or something. I was angry. I actually did that was one of the few times I've done a video like trashing a book, you know.
Mind the Comics wrote Doom fan fiction. All right. It always bothered me that Dr. Doom was a magic user.
Oh no, that was part of it. He was science and black magic put together. That's what made him cool.
To me, the problem with magic in comics is like I don't mind when it's off by itself, like Ditko, Doctor Strange, and stuff like that. But magic is always such an out. Which is one of the reasons I don't think DC's magic characters have ever worked for me, because they were always mixing them in with their superheroes. Is you don't have to explain anything with magic. You can do anything in magic. And most of the time, magic users are used as plot devices more than anything else. If the plot has to be moved along, do some magic. And that's what always annoyed me about them. And
you can't do the same thing.
Doom too.
What, Scott?
You can do the same thing using technology as well.
You can, but there's generally some rules to it.
But
with magic, there's no rules.
Yeah, but with Doom, they never overdid it. You know what I mean? I never saw it being
but every time his magic would pop up, it would be to solve a plot problem.
The only time it bothered me that Doom had magic is when they were retelling his origin, and they showed him just in a dorm with all these candles doing, summoning a demon. And I'm like, what college is this? You know,
when I was going to college, you do that, and then Dre Garcia would show up.
There you go. Now,
Tim froze on us.
Black man.
He's back. You froze, now you're unfrozen.
We got a storm going on. If I go out again, I may not be coming back. So, don't take. No, but I think Doom, that made Doom unique. That gave him the edge that he needed. Your villains always got to be able to beat your heroes, so the heroes have stakes. And you always kind of got this feeling that if he went straight at Reed, and he did it before, straight technology, Reed will hand him his butt. But Doom's got that little magic in his back pocket where he can mess him up. I never thought he took it far enough.
As Dave McKenzie says here, Dr. Doom was like Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, and a few others mixed together somehow without feeling like a stretch. It felt like a stretch to me when the magic was introduced.
Yeah. But then
that was when it was like, what?
And I'm trying to think who did this graphic novel. I've never been able to get my hands on, but I read about it online. But, Mike Mignola drew, I think it was Roger Stern wrote it, but he did a graphic novel of Dr. Doom and Doctor Strange, where they finally went to hell to get his mom. But I didn't spoil it for myself. But see, that's the thing. The thing that made Doom a little bit more human, I guess, was the fact that he wanted to save his mother from that.
That didn't bother. The whole Doom dabbling in black magic to save his mother's soul didn't bother me at all. Yeah. It's when, Doom is a sorcerer as powerful as Doctor Strange, and all of a sudden he's in a corner and he uses magic to get out of whatever problem. It's like, oh, come on.
But I would probably be on board with you if he didn't have his mother as the reason he got into magic. You know what I mean? He had a story and a reason he got into it. That's why it made sense. He didn't find magic. He didn't go to the Tibetan hills to find the ancient one to find himself. He was like, I want to kick.
So I wouldn't mind him dabbling in it, but they made him as powerful in it as any other powerful sorcerer character. That's what annoyed me.
I think Doom doesn't practice magic. he just writes the incantations as code for his armor, and it's the armor that performs the magics, not him.
That's right. I completely nice. Get somebody get Paolo a cookie, man. Chop that.
Bendis' brief run references Triumph and Torment. Okay.
Okay. Well, Bendis is great at taking apart puzzles and other comics and just rearranging the pieces. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So.
And speaking of magic, we got the 50th and last issue of Birthright this week.
Is it finally over after like a decade? No.
Probably about 6 or 7 years. I think this started in 2014. A lot of and it's been really good all the way through. And I have to say, this has been the best epilogue in comics.
Nice.
Because the whole thing was leading up to this big war, as comics are wont to do. Of course, you have your whole series leading up to a big conflict. The big conflict happened and ended about issue 46, I think. And then the last 5 issues have been what happens after the big war ends, epilogue kind of thing. And it's been a really good story, the epilogue. And this was kind of an epilogue to the epilogue. And I just think they did just such a really good job with the epilogue of I've never seen an epilogue done this well. I've just really enjoyed this last story. It was just kind of like, a decompression from this big war story. The story started out about this family where the kid disappeared, and then the story ends up about this same, the family who was in the whole book, but the parents have disappeared, kind of thing. But they know where they went. They went to Terranos, the magic world. So they have to get them back and this and that. But it was just really well done, I have to say. It's one of the best endings to a series, because they not only stuck the landing with the war, they stuck the landing with the ending of the series, which is rare.
Okay, so they didn't make the mistake of Return to the King, where we got 20 epilogues and only 2 was good. He nailed it. He landed the plane, and everybody
got an epilogue.
And all those 20 epilogues were better than the Hobbit movie was.
Yes.
I still say 2 of them. 2 of them were. But
only just heard of Birthright. Now that it's concluding, what is it about? Birthright is about it's kind of a magic story where in the very beginning, sort of the setup was that father's out playing ball with his son, and the son disappears. And it wrecks the whole family. And there's a younger brother to the son too. And mother, father, younger brother, the older brother, who's about 10, disappears. They never find him. And then, like a year later, after the family has been ripped apart, this 22-year-old version of the son shows up. And it turns out he's been on this magical planet, Terranos, where he's the chosen one to fight this big magical leader of the planet named Lore. And the whole story is about, and Lore wants to invade Earth now. So the whole story was about this older brother. The younger brother is now the older brother, and he comes back, and his parents are just 6 months ago. This 10-year-old kid left, and now this 22-year-old comes back. So who knows magic and is a barbarian with a big sword. So the whole series was about this war with Terranos. Mostly took place on Earth, but it flashed back to the younger kid's years and training on Terranos too. But well done. The only weird thing about it is this may be the first cover I like of the series. I really like the artist, who is Andre Bresson. He's done a really good job on the art, but his covers are kind of lackluster, which is just weird. I mean, it's like, how do I like this artist so much, but his covers are just like, they're adequate. But I guess that that can be a separate skill, doing the covers, and it's written by Joshua Williamson. But yeah, really nice, a solid series. And 50 issues is a long series these days. That's for sure.
Nice. Guys, if the internet goes out, I'm going to bow out again. I might, so sorry. Yeah. But
if you disappear, you disappear.
Yeah.
It's it. I've not bought all of Birthright. I bought it. I think I missed out on the very first issues and got the first trade. I like issue 5 was the first. It was one of those books. When I first saw it, I thought it was a kid's book because it starred a kid on the cover, and I was just like, maybe. I kind of passed it up. Then I heard good things about it, and I picked up issue like 4 or 5 was the first issue I got and liked it. It's not a kid's book, and then I picked up the first trade that came out and bought it. All the issues since then.
Was it with you guys, or was I talking to somebody privately about the Mysterious Thunder Agents comic that came out in the 80s that was secretly by DC?
It wasn't
secretly by DC?
Yeah, Deluxe Comics was actually DC. Giffen, Perez, and a couple of people from DC actually worked on a 5-issue Thunder Agent series.
Oh yeah, I have that. I never. Yeah, they had big names on there.
Yeah, well, I had the first 2, and I have no idea where they're at. I mean, maybe I sold them a couple years ago.
I not only have them all, I have the.
Well, I found
the archive of it too.
Okay, so it's in one of the archives. What number is that?
It's in archive volume 7. Is this? Yeah, volume 7.
I think I have 4, 5, and 6 or something. Okay, but
this is the.
Yep, that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I had the first 2 issues and found the 5th one. And now that we have the internet, I'm was able to do a little digging on these. This one has Jerry Ordway and Keith Giffen and stuff working on it, which is fantastic.
Does the archive explain why Paul Carbonaro thought he had the rights to do Thunder Agents comics?
I don't know. I think it might. If I remember correctly. I think so. There's an introduction. There's usually an introduction that explains that. Oh, Keith Giffen writes the introduction.
Yeah.
Because the Deluxe Comics version was not strictly official. I'm not entirely sure who owned the rights to the Thunder Agents when Tower Comics went out of business.
Yeah.
But Deluxe
somebody in Canada bought them. Was that it?
Yeah, but Carbonaro published them without telling anybody that he was going to do it.
There was another series too. Not only was there this one, which was done by a lot of they got Steve Ditko in this, George Perez.
Yeah, and that was coming out. That was coming out, I think, right in the middle of Crisis going on. I think that's why a lot of people might have missed it.
Jerry Ordway, John Workman.
Yeah, the issue I have has Jerry Ordway and Keith Giffen, I think, working on it.
Keith Giffen. Here's Paul Galici.
Yeah.
I remember wondering who was putting this together when I was buying it off the stands in the early 80s. But there was also... Let me see if I can find the issues over here.
In the meantime, I love when he starts digging, man, because he just goes off screen. Then he comes on screen. He's hunched over with his book and his glasses.
There we go.
You know what? You remind me of the librarian in Sandman every now and then, man. Lucian. I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you. Yeah.
At about the same time, this one was coming out. Hall of Fame featuring the Thunder Agents. This is May 1983. And it's got some reprints, I think, of the Thunder Agents in it. I thought it had some new stuff, too. But this looks like old reprints, this issue. So they were publishing reprints of the Thunder Agents.
I knew the exact number of Wally Wood ran books from the 60s that came out of Thunder Agents. It just blows my mind that something like 21 issues in 2 little miniseries where everybody had their own little book from the Thunder Agents has lasted over 50 years. Reprinted over and over, tried to be brought back. It just blows my mind that a little Wally Wood book like that has just survived all these years.
Let's see, that's 80. But I think people thought it was in the public domain at this time.
That would not be possible.
What was that?
That wouldn't be possible, not with the legislation as it was.
No, because there were some problems with. I remember reading about it. There were some problems with the copyright at the time. The Thunder Agents comics didn't put indicias in their books or something. I don't remember what it was. What is this? Yeah, this is 84. So this is all coming out in 83, 84. But yeah, it was in the middle of these that they both discovered that somebody owns Thunder Agents.
So let me get this straight. If I remember right, Wally Wood committed suicide 81, 82. And then all of a sudden we got everybody scrambling the next couple years to get some Thunder Agents out. I think that might have had something to do with it also,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think people were under the mistake, like I said, they were under the mistaken idea that it was public domain somehow, or else there was somebody who said he had the rights to them.
They might have thought that. I mean, if you know what I remember about Wally Wood's kind of decline, he amazes me because it's like Wally Wood. If I like had to do like comparing it, it's like this great big huge supermodel that was huge. And by the time that like her career was almost over, 10 years later, she was doing porn because Wally Wood was doing adult comics, if you will, and stuff like that.
Wally Wood was doing adult comics long before most other people were.
Yeah.
Go, Scott. Go, man. Go. Tell the story.
The same.
Wally Wood liked doing them. Yeah. It's not like. Yeah. See, I wouldn't say the adult comics were like doing porn. It was more like the working for Marvel was doing porn for him. He would rather have been doing the adult comics.
Yeah, like I said, some of the articles that I read that talked about his life, they kind of gave it that spin. By the end of his career, he was so undependable. That's all the work he could get. I didn't realize he really, really liked doing them. You know what I mean? I thought he did. I thought he did fine.
No, that was his self-published stuff from what is it, Wits End?
Sally Forth.
Oh, if I knew it was on the shelf, man. Yeah, I kind of had the idea that with Wally, it was work. You know what I mean? That's how it came off to me. It was just work. And the articles and stuff where they talked about Wood made it sound like, he could only get work in the the seedy part of comics.
I don't think Wally Wood's estate gets any royalties.
Yeah. It depends on the publisher because Wally Wood's estate, I think David Spurlock may work or has contract Wally Wood's estate. They
They've
really
got a Facebook page.
Kind of stuff. Yeah.
They've got a Facebook page. I follow.
So, they're
Wallace Wood's estate, because he was never called Wally.
Wallace. Yeah.
He was always called Woody. Yeah. All his friends knew him as Woody.
Right.
No one actually called him Wally.
The Wood
That's what Howard Chaykin tells us.
Keeps track of that kind of stuff fairly carefully.
Yeah. Just like Walt Simonson always likes to be credited as Walter.
Nice.
He prefers because that's his real name. So when he gets a credit, he likes it to be Walter rather than Walt. I've had that discussion.
I remember at Baltimore Con, he was doing something like I think there was like a piece of paper for some reason taped to the fold-out table that he was at, this big plastic piece of table, and I think he like scribbled his name on it or something. And I saw two people that worked there like, we got to frame this table, we got to hang it on the wall, and I was like, what? Did I just hear that? That's when I went and got a Coke. I was like, so there's something kind of going on that I'm curious about, and I honestly don't know if it's like this little mean streak so I can giggle, which I hope it's not. But I don't have the Disney Plus. I wasn't impressed with WandaVision when it started out, but this Loki show, apparently, I admire whoever is talking to the Marvel people who make these TV shows and movies, because they have to have an advisor or something who knows their comics. They knows their stuff going back to the Bronze Age, right?
Yeah.
So the only reason I know about this issue is I have a huge Thor collection that was the stepdads and the uncles from the 70s. And I've read them off and on since a kid. But there's like this obscure Thor story from like Thor 284 with the Time Twisters. And it's got a dinosaur on the cover from the early 70s. Well, apparently they popped up in the Loki show. And I saw people throw that issue on eBay for like $79 or something. Mm-hmm. But I'm chuckling Because anytime I've seen comics from the 70s get real hot, people will pay big money for them, and they don't ask if the Marvel value stamp is still in it. So over the years, I've gotten a kick of seeing a few videos where somebody was excited and they're actually going through the book if it's not slab before it was a slab thing, and then you just see them kind of stop and they hold up. There's a hole, in their comic.
I just saw someone put together a video. I think it was Erod, one of the New York Warriors guys, about other key issues that may have value stamps missing from them. Because he's like, everybody knows Hulk 181 to look for the value stamp, but there's a few others. He's like, here's a few others.
I think the one that got me, and but it was a Thor issue with I think the first appearance of Firelord in it. That's the one that got me. Yeah. And then Scott's seen this one in action. There's actually I have it right here. There's a G.I. Joe yearbook annual that Mike Golden did, like number 2 or 3.
Oh yeah.
And every time I buy that thing, there's something wrong with it. I can't, mine disintegrated that I had as a kid. And then I found one, and Scott was with me when I opened it up, and somebody cut out the subscription thing in the back to subscribe to it. I was like, it's okay. And Scott was like, no, it's not.
They've got an artist edition portfolio
Here it is.
of that G.I. Joe. I think I did a video of this one that's on my channel.
Yeah.
But if you've never seen the artist edition portfolios, they print them on individual sheets of paper. So it's like and with the G.I. Joe annual, what's interesting is since this one was pasted up on the board, they've got one side with all the balloons missing. Oh, look at that. And one side with all the pasted down balloons on it. So, like I said, I think I have a video looking at this on my channel. If you want to check it
the
out.
portfolio they did for Bunny Wrights and the Muck Monster is really nice.
Right. They did it for
Russ Heath.
Walt Simonson's Lawnmower Man.
Yeah.
The Stephen King one, and I have one other over there. What is it? I think it's Thrill Kill by Neil Adams.
It may be.
I think they did that one too.
So something I bought at Ollie's for like super cheap was this long fabled bat manga from the 60s that was over in Japan.
Wow.
And a lot of people didn't hear about it until Grant Morrison brought in a character, Lord Deathkiller. I can't remember what his name is now. But apparently they brought it over here in 2 volumes. I found the second one, of all places, at an Ollie. So this was like $3 for a bat manga, if you will. So anybody else have these? Know anything about them?
I know nothing about those.
Chip Kidd did a bat manga book several years before that. It's like a reference book on what you're holding there.
Yeah.
But speaking of Grant Morrison, I showed this last week that I took out of the library when I said for some reason I got nostalgic for the Grant Morrison, Frank Quitely X-Men, which I never even really liked in the first place. But as Paolo pointed out, it was better than the 10 years of boring Scott Lobdell writing. But I got to say, man, I flipped through this and I'm still not that big a fan of it. It is so goofy.
Yeah.
No one like mentions that about a lot of Grant Morrison's writing. It's either goofy or funny goofy.
Oh no, I've said something about it. To me, Grant Morrison's trying to be our generation's Gardner Fox of the Silver Age. He goes through comics from the 50s and 60s, and he pulls them and tries to make them relevant. That's what he did with this whole Batman run, and he did that with that X-Men run. There's some stuff from the Kirby Lee days where there's a newspaper in a Silver Age X-Men book where there's an editorial in the newspaper that one of the X-Men's reading, and it shows like, here's the mutants of the future, and all humans are like, saddled up like horses and tied up, and it's got a mutant with a red shirt and stuff snapping a whip at him. He brought it into the book. He even said He made that a character in a storyline. He brought that to life. So yeah, go ahead.
The problem is, I don't know if he's trying to be funny or not, because everybody takes it so seriously. Like I was, the last thing I read by him that I was buying regularly was, what was it? Batman Confidential. I think, was that the name of it? No, Batman Incorporated. Inc. That was it.
Batman Inc.
Burnham, Chris Burnham drawing it. Was that his name?
He went back to. Go ahead. I was about to tell you where that all came from.
But I was reading that. I first bought an issue because the cover was so funny. It was Batman on his motorcycle and Native American Batman racing him on a bison. And I was just like, what the hell? But it was well done. I bought it. Then I started buying, and it was funny. And I'm reading it, laughing out loud, going, "This book is funny." And I'm like, "Is it?" But everybody who talks about it takes it seriously. And I'm like, I don't know if this is supposed to be funny or not.
It is supposed to be funny and exciting.
Funny? What was that?
Yes. It is supposed to be funny and exciting. And that's what he does when he does superheroes. That's what he did when he took over JLA. People somehow got this idea that he was supposed to be this avant-garde intellectual who did Vertigo comics. Mm-hmm. But he's actually quite insufferable when he does avant-garde intellectual. Animal Man is still funny and exciting. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Animal Man, and he brings in a beast. That in itself is supposed to be interesting to read. But when he did Doom Patrol, you notice in the first arc, he keeps name dropping, which is what you do when you try to show everybody how smart you are.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I know the name of this Dadaist, impressionist painter or philosopher or whatever, and I'm mentioning his name.
Right. Morrison is one of the guys that I actually believe he grew up reading comics. You know what I mean? Because some of the things he pulls. Like I said, he did the X-Men story that somebody brought up where I was talking about how he brought in the character from the newspaper strip. But if you go back to his Justice League run, he had an Atom in the future in Rock of Ages where Darkseid took over, and the Atom, little Ray Palmer Atom, saved the day. But he had the Atom in a costume that was all white. Well, if you go back and look at some 70s comic books, from DC, there'll be an ad, or it may be in the letters pages, but an ad where they take each head of the Justice League and made a circle with their heads talking about him, and they didn't color the Atom. They didn't make his blue hood. It was white. And I was convinced that's where Morrison got that after I started seeing him pulling from the Silver Age with a bunch of his stuff and books.
I know Morrison has great affection for the Silver Age, but I can't tell if he's making fun of it or not. Because
no,
to me,
it's all serious. That's the whole point of his JLA run. He just, I just want to write the JLA as all the good superheroes, or all the great superheroes. There's nothing else. He's not trying to be clever. He was being clever at the time when he was doing Invisibles. But on JLA I want to do a fun story, exciting, big, with all the major superheroes. That's what he did.
He brought the Shaggy Man back.
That I understand about JLA. That was the late '90s. But I'm talking. Have you read Batman Incorporated?
Now, let me tell you what he was doing. What he did is that he wanted to take everything that was Batman, every decade, everything that ever happened, and he wanted to put it in his run and make it all still there. He thinks the Silver Age was a great time and interesting. He just tries to make it work. He wanted to take everything that was Batman ever and put it in his run and make it work. You had Batman Zur. He got that in there. He had Batmite in there. He had the League of Batman from the 50s. He brought it all back.
But was it supposed to be funny? That's what I don't get. I find it funny, and I'm like, and I found it funny, and nobody. I'm like, how come because Batman Incorporated was a pretty big talked about book at the time.
Grant Morrison was on Batman for so long and pulling so much stuff that, like somebody said, people dropped. I mean, people were like, get Morrison off Batman that last year he was on. I mean, he even had Batman thrown all the way back to the Stone Age and reincarnated as a pirate and a witch hunting pilgrim and all this stuff until he was in present time.
But
that's what I mean.
That was Batman and Robin. I think by the time Batman and Robin rolled around, people were tired of him on it.
Yeah.
But like I just remember getting Batman Incorporated and laughing out loud at it, but everybody else was taking it seriously, and I'm like, and I was like, I don't know, is this supposed to be? I think this is supposed to be funny, but I'm not sure.
People take everything that Morrison does seriously because they think it's something deep and it's referencing some sort of obscure arcana of knowledge, but it isn't.
Right.
But there's another thing is that when people reference comics that happened 50 years ago, that also gets mistaken as depth.
Right.
It's not supposed to be deep. It is supposed to be funny. You're supposed to enjoy it for what it is.
Morrison kind of has that M. Night Shyamalan curse. Like, everybody thinks M. Night Shyamalan's going to give you a twist. A lot of people read Morrison's stuff and think that needs to be read into it, like you're saying. I get it. But you also got to understand, was Morrison on drugs when he wrote some of these stories? He claims he wrote the entire Invisibles thing on hallucinating.
I know he was. Yeah, my friend Bunch was his editor for some of his stuff. He was on drugs.
What'd you say, Scott?
Was that Scott?
I think Morrison suffers from trying to live up to an expectation he has in his mind that he can do all this stuff as well as Alan Moore did it.
Fair enough. Yeah. See, I think that's Warren Ellis. In my mind, that's Ellis, but I can see Morrison.
No. Morrison as a mad-on for Alan Moore.
Well,
I don't know. But
this may be a controversial statement, but I flat out say it. I think Alan Moore is 10 times the author that Grant Morrison ever was.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's that controversial, but I read the back half of All Star Superman. I got like volume 2 of it and did not like that one at all.
I loved All Star Superman, and I think it's probably one of the best Superman stories because it's all a big ride where Superman goes and does Superman things.
See, one of the things about like what he's saying is that about Morrison is that sometimes he'll take those big questions that readers have and he'll stick it in there. Like, why did nobody ever figure out that Bruce Wayne would be the only guy rich enough to be Batman? When in Batman Incorporated, he came out and he went, "Well, the secret's out. I'm the guy that's been funding Batman for years." He'll figure cool things like that out sometimes. Knock it out.
And you know what I was just thinking about this one too. His new X-Men. I think I would like this better if it wasn't the X-Men.
I feel like that with a lot of books. Yeah, I get you on that one.
Yeah, I'm like that, but it makes no sense to me as the X-Men. But if it was not the X-Men, it might make more sense to me.
I'll tell you where he lost me in this one. He lost me when they killed Magneto again, and he was trying to make sure that there's no way to bring him back. They cut his head off, and then Cyclops was holding his helmet with his head in it, and he was sitting there like zapping it with his beams, And I'm like, it's not burning it; it would just crush it. You know what I mean? I was like, that's where he lost me. He got all the way almost to the end, and then he lost me.
Yeah, I would have to say most people love All-Star Superman. I'm in the minority.
I loved All-Star Superman. I especially loved in the middle when there was stuff in the Silver Age he was pulling, but when he had Zabaro, he made an imperfect duplicate of an imperfect duplicate, and came up with this really cool character on Bizarro World. I loved it. Yeah, I think Morrison's having fun with conventions and history of comics while he takes the fun very seriously. Much of his writing is equally goofy and self-serious.
Yeah, goofy and self-serious at the same time. Exactly. This is a goofy comic, and this goofy comic is taking itself seriously.
Here's the deal. Morrison knows it's a comic, and there's times where he's like, it's supposed to be fun. You know what I mean? I think Morrison likes to have that feel that he had when he was a kid reading the books. I think maybe that's what he's trying to do.
I think he likes to get high and write, and whatever comes out, comes out.
That's his Vertigo stuff. Yeah.
But the thing is, when he's being goofy and self-serious at the same time is, this is goofy, but I'm not calling the reader stupid.
Yeah. This final crisis comment here, when Final Crisis feels like it was cookie cutter made for me. I mean, it had, and I totally get why some people don't like it. But when I read it, it was like Morrison took everything about Bronze Age, Silver, everything from DC and Jack Kirby's New Gods and Commandy, and he put it in there. I actually had friends who were like, "Hey, man, should I get Final Crisis?" And they actually told the dude. Now, Tim said it's cookie cutter made for him. They were like, "Fuck that." I love Final Crisis is the one thing where Morrison just goes ahead and assumes that you have read comics for a long time. That's the problem.
Well, Morrison writing himself into Animal Man made me not read Animal Man. The very first issue I ever picked up of Animal Man had him in it, and him saying, "This comic is stupid. Why are you wasting your time reading it?" And I went, "All right." I never read another issue of Animal Man.
See, I skipped Animal Man because I thought he was trying to be a Morrison wannabe. Like, he did it with Swamp Thing, so this guy's going to do it with Animal Man. And then around issue 5 is when I finally jumped on Animal Man. You know, so yeah.
I never, like I said, I never, after, when a writer tells me his work is terrible in the work, I'm going to believe him.
Yeah.
That's just the way I am. I've learned to believe people when they tell you about themselves.
And this thing about Morrison having Matt on, I've heard that before, yet I've seen Grant Morrison praise Alan Moore's work. How he read The Killing Joke and came up with the idea that Batman killed the Joker, you know, and all this stuff in it. Warren Ellis is the guy that in the first issue of Transmetropolitan, you had Spider Jerusalem coming out of quarantine or whatever he did to himself, and he looked like Alan Moore. And then he shaved his head and became the bald-headed, tattooed Spider Jerusalem. I thought that was like a statement against Moore. Like, Moore's dead, here's the new and fresh. That's what I thought he was doing.
Yeah, but it didn't turn Spider Jerusalem into himself. It turned Spider Jerusalem into Grant Morrison. Because Grant Morrison is the bald one, not Warren Ellis.
I've read very little Transmetropolitan, but now you got me wanting to finish it. You know, I'm like, you know.
It did something in Planetary when they go to the funeral of the Constantine analog, and the character turns itself into Spider Jerusalem. Time for a new me.
Yeah, he took. Warren Ellis looked at Grant, but he looked at all the Vertigo line and said, "Don't they really look ridiculous?" And this is why I think Ellis is the one. Yeah, that's Planetary number 8, I think. You know, I have a video. No.
Yeah, but Ellis is younger than both Moore and Morrison, so he can look at them and make fun of them both.
Yeah, he looks like he's 10 years older than both of them, man. That's what's wild.
He doesn't, because he doesn't take drugs. Warren Ellis needs more drugs.
Speaking of, have you guys seen a picture of Frank Miller recently?
Yeah, I think his alcoholism.
50. Yeah.
No, he's looking better than he looked a few years ago.
What got me was that it looked like his face was distorted with his nose. Seriously. I mean, I'm being serious. It actually looked like, I thought he might have had something wrong with his bones or something.
Yeah, he was starting to look like an EC character there for a while.
About 5 years ago, he looked like he was at death's door.
Yeah.
And about 2 or 3 years ago, I saw he looked healthier.
Oh, okay.
At least in the photos I've seen.
Nobody confirmed it, but I am pretty sure that he had a liver transplant.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
And I have never read Transmetropolitan either. I've only read a couple issues of it, and it never grabbed me. I don't know why.
Can I say it right since it's in front of me? Transmetropolitan. You know, I was going by it. But I read 3 or 4 issues back in the 90s, I think, and you know what? I thought it was going to be heavy metal like, but I really felt like I needed a shower after I read it. I don't
even remember it, really, the issue. I remember liking the covers and the artwork.
I think Moore and Morrison are both guilty of self-mythology. Moore's just more intelligent, so that seams aren't as visible. I think a lot of these guys make a character out of themselves. Warren Ellis from 2009 to 2012, he kicked me off a lot of his stuff just because I would challenge him when he made fun of America or something. But I've seen interviews where people act like behind the scenes they're different people, you know.
I just think they're weirdo artists. That's what artists are. I know a lot of them.
We're all weirdos. I think a lot of it's an act. I think Alan Moore brings in his mysticism and stuff when he's in public. You know what I mean?
It's not an act.
Not from other people that I know that know Alan Moore.
Well, Scott, it's not an act. Is that
not
what
from other people I know that know Alan Moore. No.
I think Warren Ellis is a big act. I'll go ahead and say it. I think he wants to be Spider Jerusalem, and that's the character he puts out when he's getting interviewed or something.
I like Jared said, they're like weirdo artists, and I'm thinking Robert Crumb's over here saying, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, exactly. That's how artists are.
That is the only time I have liked somebody saying "Hold my beer." I actually hate that, but that fits. That is perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, but Warren Ellis's character of himself is more NWO, and Grant Morrison's character of himself is WWF at the top of their popularity.
There we go.
Well,
and then
I've been reading Warren Ellis's newsletter for years now, though it doesn't come out anymore since he got in trouble. But his character was, I mean, he was just always kind of writer. He was kind of very straightforward in his newsletter.
I'll tell you what, when I'm willing to take it for Warren Ellis, we have reached the bizarro world. That's all I'll say. I got a Grant Morrison interview in Wizard here somewhere. That kind of, am I going out? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Am I here?
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a Grant Morrison interview. This is when I started thinking these guys make themselves character. But supposedly the guy interviewing from Wizard went to Scotland, and when he got there, he had like his model wife sitting on a couch, and he had a pinstripe suit on with his bald head. And he looks at the guy, and it's like he's going to get interviewed like at 11 o'clock at night in the middle of a rainstorm in his house. And then Morrison stops the interview and says, "Come with me, I want to show you something." So they go outside, and he takes them to a bush, and he opens the bush, and he shows them these gigantic spiders and stuff. And I'm sitting here like, this is such bullshit. I'm sitting here thinking, this is all staged for the interviewer. And that's why I kind of think some of these guys put on an act. But
well, that's not an act. That's them having fun.
Nice.
So I think you've got it wrong on the thinking. You're thinking of when you say put on an act.
They make themselves a character in order to brand themselves and sell themselves like a wrestler. Since Paolo brought
I don't think that's it. I think they are characters, and they're using the fact that they're characters to brand themselves. Okay. That's where it comes in handy.
It's the same thing. You notice that in wrestling,
the wrestlers are actually playing a character. That's the difference.
Paolo, I think I got this. I know how to explain it to where he'll understand. You know what they're doing? They take what they are and they're turning it up to 11.
That's what they're doing. They're really weirdo artists, but they can't. You can't take it from a weirdo artist. You can't be a weirdo artist through most of your life. It's just not appropriate. When you're a comic book writer and someone's coming over to interview you, that's when you can really be a weirdo artist. That's what they're doing.
Do you remember a blues pianist called Mac Rabenak, also known as Dr. John?
Yeah.
Really? Dr. John? That's his real name? Nice.
Yeah. That guy was a character until the day he died.
Yeah. That's what I mean. The creative people are characters.
Well, see,
matter of fact, if Grant Morrison wants to succeed if he wants to break through in comics, he has to not be a character. So then when he finally breaks through and can now be a character, woohoo! That's a good time. As opposed to wrestlers who aren't characters to begin with, they're athletes. And they want to be wrestlers, and they have to come up with they have to be able to play different characters until they find one that breaks through.
But when it comes to superhero comics, it's still just guys in spandex beating the crap out of each other.
Yeah. I'm sitting here. Yeah, I'm sitting here wanting to introduce you to Mad Dog Vachon. But anyway.
Oh, I'm sure some wrestlers are characters. I mean, no doubt.
99.9% of them are.
I just think to get a mystique about themselves and to put, I think they make themselves characters, in real life. for interviews. I think they can turn it on or put that face on. And I'm not saying they're not characters or interesting people or quirky, but I think some of them put on a better act than others.
Oh yeah. Some are good at, like Harvey Pekar. Harvey Pekar was a character. Mm-hmm. That's why Letterman had him on, because he was a character to begin with. Matter of fact, didn't Harvey Pekar get tired of being treated not as a person and a character and like a character, so he stopped going on or something crazy like that?
But they framed it to where he had a meltdown because his wife took off to do missionary work, like in Africa or something, and he just kind of lost it being by himself. But we'll never know the truth. But I'd go back, since we're bringing up Letterman. Let's talk. What I'm saying is like you had Jerry Lawler and Lotka from Taxi. Why am I going blank on his name?
Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, Andy Kaufman. For decades, people thought that was real, or at least questioned how real it was when he smacked him on Letterman and after Kaufman threw hot coffee on him. The movie finally said it was a fake. The setup, or to do that to get people to want to see him get wrestled. That's all I'm saying. Some of these guys do during interviews and stuff. Same thing.
But they're being themselves. They're not. Though once again, you're picking actors playing roles. These guys aren't actors playing roles. They're creative people. I say creative people have to be disruptive, notorious. They don't have to be. They often are, and you can't be. If you want to break in at DC or Marvel, you can't be disruptive and notorious if you want. Once you're Grant Morrison and have a sales track record, you can be a disruptive, notorious type. But when you're Grant Morrison breaking in and Alan Moore's recommending you, you can't be disruptive, notorious. So you have to suppress your disruptive, notorious side until you've broken in, and then some interviewer wants to interview you, so you show them your spiders in the garden.
But that worked for Jim Steranko, though.
Well, Steranko was a showman to begin with.
There we go. Literally. Yeah,
he was going on shows.
Yeah, he was a escape artist, showman, carnival barker. Yeah, he had a background and all that stuff.
Once you're successful, there's no line to cross. Kind of thing. Once you make a company money, I mean, you have to diddle children in order for them to get you.
Well, here's the deal with this question here. I think there's a part of human nature that works with. I worked with kids for 6 years in schools. I think when you get them one-on-one, they're still interesting people. They're just people. But you have to take. But if a kid starts acting up in the classroom in front of their friends, the best thing you can do is to get them away from the audience, take them out in the hallway and talk to them.
Yeah.
They completely change. I kind of get the idea with just people in general are like that. The work shoot.
Some people.
There we go.
And we haven't had shock jocks since the 80s, I think.
Thanks,
man. Speaking of Vertigo.
Except for Rush Limbaugh.
Do you remember this book from the 90s, Vamps, with the Brian Bolland cover?
Did Elaine Lee write that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This is one of the books that I just wonder if anybody had memories of it. That's all I'm going to get at. I'm not going
to just remember because Elaine Lee wrote it.
Yeah.
Don't remember that one at all.
All right.
The next new one I got this week, I only got 4 books. Well, I actually got 8 books, but 4 of them were Carmen, issue number 4 of 5. This another excellent issue. Did you see that? Who was it? Gore Vidal went out and bought the Spanish language album of this because he couldn't wait anymore, he said. This is Julian March, and it was made for the European market too. So they got it all as a graphic album. We're getting it as individual issues first. And it's just a wonderful story. Carmen here is some sort of angel who guides people into the afterlife. And so far in issue 1, we had a young woman who killed herself, so she died. And what was interesting too what was so good about it is they gave us a good 6 or 8 pages of the young woman growing up. as a kid with her mother. I mean, they did it. So they really got us kind of invested in her life. And then she ended up killing herself for various reasons. And now she's been kind of wandering the world as a ghost with Carmen. And you think Carmen's trying to teach her some lesson, but we don't know what. Because Carmen is also getting in trouble. You get some hint that there's an afterlife out there. And there's a way it runs. Because, like, Carmen has a boss in this issue who's like, get that person to her next life or something like that. Stop hanging around with her so much. So we're mostly spending time with Carmen, and I forget the dead woman's name, as she roams around whatever city she's in Europe, trying to figure out what to do next. Examining her life a little bit and figuring out. But it's really, really well done. I'm enjoying it.
Nice. I tell you what, when I get that first trade of crossover in, since you talked about it, if I like it, I'll go Carmen.
Yeah. Julian March and Paul Dini, Gotham 70 Sirens. Yeah, I've never read that one. European norm is softy porn in the U.S. Yeah, she's naked through most of it, but, we'll read Carmen this weekend. Uh-oh, Paolo's doing shots. What's going on over there?
I was drinking a whiskey. It's done now. It was one whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. Picard was a character in the sense that Moore and Morrison and their project perform heightened versions of themselves as a branding exercise. Well, I think that's also because I don't know that there's much difference between Harvey Picard and Moore and Morrison, except Harvey Picard was probably, he was different in his own way. Harvey Picard wasn't sort of interested in outwardly expressing his differentness. Harvey Picard would never have long hair.
Genetically.
Because that's just not how he is. But I don't know how much different he is than Moore and Morrison, really, except they've got a different stage.
You're talking about characters. Von Bodie was a character long before any of those guys.
Oh, yeah. American Splendor is a fantastic movie. I like that one. Break out the tequila anyway, comic crap. Yeah, I love that American. I love the Crumb movie and I love the American Splendor movie. They came out right around the same time. I have to go and rewatch them. I haven't seen them in a long time. Oh, we lost.
Lost him.
Yeah, it's been raining pretty hard around this area
these
days too.
So. How can I say no?
Oh, might as well.
But Carmen's been good.
I've tried Canadian. I've tried Canadian Club whiskey, and it's not very good.
Carmen actually took me by surprise too, because I've seen some, like the only thing I knew from Julian March was his covers, like he did for Catwoman and stuff. And I know there's an art book out of his covers that I was, I've always, because I'm a sucker for any book about comic book covers. And I almost bought it, but I haven't yet because I didn't really know his art that well. But after reading this, I'm like, wow, I should get that book. Because I really like his stuff. I mean, I don't know how close this stuff is.
You're going to be happy in a few months because there's a 2-volume set including every single one of the Detective Comics covers.
Oh, cool. A new one?
Yeah.
I'll have to look for that. Uh-oh, Canadian Club is a blend, not the straight stuff, Paolo.
Exactly.
I don't drink much, but I like the taste of Japanese whiskey. My stepson brought some.
Yeah, I got some from my dad a couple of times.
Quite a few characters prior to Baudet, too.
I can't think of any characters that were more flamboyant than Baudet was prior to him in the comics field.
Yeah. Michael Golden is certainly he's a good artist through and through.
One of, and I wouldn't say he's but he's up there.
Yeah, he's up there. Him doing Colossus with no reflection. When he was I remember him showing me that. Internet is out, Tim says.
Why does everybody wait to send me messages until I'm on podcast?
Well, that was Tim sending us a
message. Oh, that's Tim. Okay, good.
Saying his internet is out. 4 years sober. Yeah, I am not a drinker, so I've been all my life sober. Eventually, Jeffrey Cat. Yeah, he was a great cover artist too.
He actually did more paperback covers than he did comics covers.
Yeah, but Mike, I can still remember back when Michael Golden was art director at Marvel. He was also drawing some covers for them, and he was showing me, just showing off one of them to me. We're sitting there talking to him, and it was the one. I don't know what you'd call it. It was sort of an Abbey Road takeoff, but not really, because I don't think they were on a road. It was 4 X-Men walking somewhere. And I think it was in some place grimy, because this is probably the late 90s. And as they were walking, they were reflected in like a puddle underneath them. Except Colossus had just died, so he took Colossus's reflection out to symbolize that he just died. It was like, look at that. Yeah. He was happy to do that. Well, I'm 20 years sober, then decided I'm not 25 trying to drink myself to death anymore. Okay. That's good. Michael Golden was one of those guys who was more influential than he was given credit for a long time. It was like he influenced like everybody in the 90s.
I wish he influenced a few other people in the 90s that didn't take him on it. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, but no Michael Golden, no Art Adams.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to producing a monthly comic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although Michael Golden's usual backup replacement when you needed someone to do something that vaguely resembled Michael Golden was Bruce Patterson.
Oh, I remember him. He was on No, I'm confusing him with Pat Broderick.
It's Pat Broderick, not Bruce Patterson. It's Pat Broderick. Bruce Patterson.
Was Bruce Patterson inking Pat Broderick?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Pat Broderick was the one that kind of looked like Michael Golden without being Michael Golden.
Without being that good.
Yeah.
Well, I liked his stuff. I remember him on at the very end of the Captain Marvel series.
Mm-hmm. In
the 80s, Pat Broderick doing some nice work.
There was one thing that Broderick did that always annoyed me. We're in the 80s. Why does everybody have 70s sideburns?
He drew fluffy, feathery hair, too.
Mm-hmm.
Pat Broderick and Michael Golden also both worked on Micronauts.
Yeah.
Yeah. He followed him on that, too, eventually. Mm-hmm. Let me pick up Star Killer Phantom in the artist edition. No, I don't even know what that is, so I didn't pick it up. I have no idea
what Star Killer Phantom is.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'll check out any artist edition. Didn't stick to you. He got the regular version of the first issue. Didn't do it for him. Yeah, I'm looking at this and getting nostalgic for it again. What is that? What makes me nostalgic for a comic series I didn't even like very much? Maybe because it's so distinctive.
You know, it's funny that I used to read X-Men back in the day when I first got back into comics, like, very late 80s, early 90s, and I look back on it now, I was like, what the hell was I buying this for?
I read it
for me now.
I was just the right age. I was like 12 to 14 when the John Byrne, Chris Claremont X-Men were coming out. So that was my favorite book then. And then John Byrne left and Cockrum came back on. I was like, yeah, I still bought it because, once again, I was young. Those were the days where when you're young and buying superhero comics, you just keep buying them. You don't want to break your rent until you learn that you don't have to, until it gets so bad that you learn you don't have to buy this comic anymore.
Yeah. They say that the X-Men should the decent stories end when Byrne leaves. That's not quite true. The following issues are still important to read, but it ends in number 150. Magneto's character arc ends, and that means the X-Men won.
Yeah.
And every story after 150 is retreading old ground for Chris Claremont.
Yeah, I kept buying it, and then Paul Smith came on, and I enjoyed those issues. And then John Romita Jr. came on, and I was enjoying those issues until, matter of fact, the ones that Tim just picked up and made a video of like 2 weeks ago. The Kulan Garth issues, X-Men 190 and 91, that made me go, that's it, I can't read this book anymore. It was just to me, it was just such a dumb, it was all of a sudden a wizard messed everything up, then a wizard fixed everything, and everything was fine again. But what's funny is I remembered deciding to bail on the X-Men. I was like, I can't buy any more X-Men. But I look on my shelf, I bought to issue 200. My X-Men collection stopped at issue 2. I'm like, I must have just kept buying them so I could get to issue 200 and then stopped. But I don't remember anything past those Kulan Garth issues. I found that
193 is when Thunderbird's kid brother tries to kill the X-Men. Then what?
They were retreading Thunderbird. I probably didn't like that.
Yeah, then
current X-Men.
Because then there's the X-Men Alpha Flight miniseries in the middle, and the trip to Asgard, and number 200 is is Magneto's trial in Paris, and number 201 is when Storm defeats Cyclops for the leadership of the X-Men, and Cyclops leaves.
That's the one I never got. Is that John Byrne or John Byrne? John Burns is a British artist, isn't he?
Number 200 is still Romita, but it's getting scratchier and scratchier. 201 is I think it's a fill-in by Rick Leonardi. But that's something that I kind of noticed. But the Claremont spent half of his run trying to write Cyclops out of the book and not managing it. And he finally got it with 201. He'd been trying to do that since
Cyclops and Wolverine switched roles over my reading of the X-Men. So when I first started reading the X-Men, the Cockrum Byrne early issues, Cyclops was the cool guy and Wolverine was the asshole. By the time I stopped reading the X-Men, Cyclops was the asshole and Wolverine was the cool guy.
To address Kenner's question there about Russ Heath's art book, no, I'm aware of it, but no, I don't have it. I would like to get it.
I'm
all about
met Paul Smith. That's good to hear. I've never met Paul.
I met him, but I like his stuff. Paul Smith is good.
Paul Smith's work on Uncanny X-Men was wonderful. Yeah, Bob Wyacek inked him nicely on that one too. I've heard so many people praise the Golden Age, and I still haven't managed to get it yet. That's probably because I don't buy back issues.
Yeah, but I don't like superhero books anymore, but I like the Golden Age. It was good.
Yeah, I've heard tons of praise of that. Yeah. Byrne was. It all depends on what age. Some of the stuff, it all depends on what. Like I was the perfect age for John Byrne and Chris Claremont X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, I read very little superhero. I don't read any Marvel or DC. I loved American Flag when it came out, but then it petered out. It just kind of, once Chaykin stopped drawing it, I stopped being interested in it. Gene thought so too. Yeah, Gene thought so too. It's just Cyclops and Wolverine switching roles. Yeah, I'm very much enjoying. Matter of fact, speaking of Chaykin, I will show you Hey Kids Comics. Which is
a great cover.
Which is Chaykin's warts and all. Matter of fact, all warts. Look back at comic history. And you really got to flip back. If you're not into comics history, you're going to have a hard time reading this. This is not for somebody who isn't into comics history.
I wonder if somebody's done a Jeff Nevins style annotation of who all the characters in the book actually are based on.
Yeah. Me too. I started following artists, not characters, probably when I was in high school.
Yeah.
Started buying indie stuff. I've been almost all indie since like the mid 80s. But like there's all I'll show you the characters. Whoops.
Well, Chaykin said in interviews that the characters are not direct analogs.
Not all. Some of them are. Some of them aren't.
Yeah, but some are a little bit of this one and a little bit of that one.
Right.
Multiple people. Right.
But like Stan Lee is Stan Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Kirby is Jack Kirby. The who is it? But then they've got like one black guy who's an analog, obviously. He's supposed to be Matt Baker, I would think, but Matt Baker died young, and they have him here in the 90s. And they've got one woman who could be Ramona Fredone, Marie Severin, but she kind of represents a few women. And then they've got, Graham Wood Publications is
EC.
EC Comics, Entertaining Comics. So he's obviously William Gaines. They've got Bob Rose, Verve editor-in-chief. Verve is Marvel. So it's obviously Stan Lee. But I'm not sure exactly who the DC guys are. Yankee Comics is DC. But I don't know enough about the DC editors to know who's who of them.
The big ones are Mort Weisinger and
Yeah. I figured one, but I don't know enough about their proclivities to know which one is. Like Ray Clark here is this silver-haired Clark knows he's a top talent. It'd be nice if others agreed with him. I think that's Gil Kane. And there's a few others you can, but not all of them. Some of them are obviously amalgam.
It would be interesting to see if anybody's come up with an annotation that explains.
Yeah.
All the analogs.
Well, like it's some of them. Like Ted Whitman is the one black artist who you would expect to be Matt Baker, but like I said, Matt Baker died in the 50s, and he's around in the 60s and 70s. And
he's
90s.
complaining a lot. He complains a lot about royalties. So I think it's a bit Steve Ditko as well there.
Oh yeah, there was a Steve Ditko in here. I forget which one it was. I can't remember. But he made Steve Ditko even more weird than I think Steve Ditko was. But yeah, there's all sorts of.
Right, but Ted Whitman was working for Bob Rose, and he was complaining about. Yeah, I remember in the early issues he was complaining about royalties. So that's where he gets the Steve Ditko from, because Ditko was the one that complained more about not getting paid what he was due.
Yeah, that could have been him. Like, I'm constantly flipping back to this just to say which guy is this, because like if you're not a fan of comics history, you're just not gonna like this.
Yeah, that's true.
Are those? Hey, yeah, I really. You know what's funny about these? Volume 1, I didn't get right away. I missed it, so I read them digitally and was like, it's okay. Then one day I was like, you know what? I want to read them physically. So I got the physical comics and liked it so much better. I bought them off of, I got a bundle of them off of eBay and liked it so much better as a physical comic. And I think one of the reasons was I could just flip back, I could flip back and forth, because I really have to do that.
Right.
To keep some of these, because he flips time periods, he flips characters, it's really not that easy to read. You have to want to read Chaykin doing comics history to like this. If you're not interested in that, stay away from it. But like I am.
Yeah, I am too. I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's not for a new reader. Yeah.
Right. No. And it's not for a casual reader. It's for a reader who's interested in Chaykin doing comic book history.
Right.
Oh, writers get more than their due. Alan Moore was the first writer to get his due, and he was the first writer to have his name in price guides. Now no one gets there. Now it's all writers. Nobody knows one artist from the next these days. Writers don't get their due. The writers have been on top of the world for 25 years now.
But now, writers can establish themselves with a run. And there are no artists right now who can draw 22 pages in one cover in 1 month.
And also, I can attest to this. I was there. I can't remember who said it. It was it was either Bob Harris or Tom DeFalco, one of the big wigs at Marvel. After the Image guys left, they said, we're never going to promote and build up an artist again. And they haven't. Matter of fact, neither has DC. They just won't do it anymore because I think it's just institutional memory now, because there's hardly anyone left who was there in the days when the Image guys left were there. I think it just became institutional memory to not promote, to treat artists as interchangeable. Carmen is one of my favorite reads right now. But I put out a video of all my stuff that I get each week, so it's easy to figure out what I'm reading.
For me to answer Fenner's question, a lot of the stuff I like doesn't come out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
There'll be creator-owned series or series of little mini-series, one-shots, things like that.
The one that does is Usagi.
Yeah, I was going to say
Yojimbo
is Usagi Yojimbo.
Yeah.
Always a favorite. My actual favorite, it only comes about once a year, is a very obscure French comic that's called Kong Crew. Yeah. It's the basis of that is King Kong survived after instead of dying at the end of the movie, and Manhattan Island basically devolves into a prehistoric state, and it's really good stuff.
I find those Eisner spirits are one of those, as with a lot of old comics, you have to read them as they were intended to be read. Read a story, put it down, read a story the next day, put it down. Sitting down and reading like 10 spirit stories in a row gets tedious.
It could, yeah.
It could, but looking at 10 spirit stories in a row doesn't get tedious, but actually reading them. But if you read one a day like they were meant to be read, or they're just a lot better like that. I'm still reading Love and Rockets. I enjoy Love and Rockets. But once again, if you're new to Love and Rockets, pick up a collected edition. Don't buy one of the individual issues. You'll be lost. Take it easy. Yeah, Jaime. I like Beto too a lot. I mean, I think Jaime's art is prettier. But I like Beto's comics just as much. To me, my favorite Hernandez brother is whichever one I'm reading at the moment. But I do like Jaime's art better because I think it's prettier. Just for looking at. But in terms of storytelling, they're both excellent. Yeah, writers and artists need to be cogs in the machine at the big companies. They do, and it's easier for a writer to be a cog in the machine because the artists are, strapped to their drawing boards all day. Right. So the writers have more time to go out there and do promotion and help be cogs. An artist can't be on Twitter all day. Yeah, I think I've got some Jaime Hernandez in my art style. Definitely, I like some of the stuff he does and some of the simplicity he gets across. And I tend to go for simplicity sometimes too. So he is definitely one of, it's funny how sometimes you don't know the art. Sometimes people point out artistic influences that you don't know you have, but him I actually know I have as an artistic influence. Yeah, I got it. Paul Smith and Leave It to Chance.
I wish they were still doing Leave It to Chance.
That was a good one. I remember enjoying that.
Yeah. I remember an old Paul Smith interview where he says that he only stays in a book long enough to get money to do what he wants next, which in one case involved buying a motorcycle so he could travel cross country.
I actually found out there's a name for that, because I suffer from it too sometimes. That's called the Filipino problem.
I bet in any other industry it wouldn't have been called that, right?
Because when it got named, because when Americans first went to the Philippines and tried to set up factories and things, and they'd hire the locals, they'd do the job, and they'd do it until they earned the money to get whatever it was they wanted to get, and then they'd quit. They couldn't keep them working at the factory because they didn't want to work at the factory. And that's how it got named the Filipino problem. And that's also why they try to pay you as little as possible to keep you coming back. Yeah. That's a good philosophy, whichever Hernandez book I'm reading. Yeah, that's how it is. But I think I buy I buy the individual issues, but when it comes to the collected editions, I have bought the Jaime books first because I've got his I've got Jaime Hernandez's Love and Rockets Volume 1 and 2 up there, and I still haven't gotten Luba, which I want to get one of these days. Did I miss the Hey Kids comment? You did miss
yeah.
You did miss that. What I'm saying about Hey Kids comics is you got to be into comics history to like it.
Well, if Chaikin does the Volume 3 completely about the Air Pirates crew,
then Comic Crack will like it.
Yes.
You have to like. You not only have to like comics history, you have to like comics history through Howard Chaykin's eyes. And like
being from New York is very much centered around the New York publishers.
Sure. Right. Because that's where you had to be. And you very much have to pay attention. And like I flip back to the beginning all the time to that, just because I can't keep all the characters straight. But I accept that. If you don't accept that, you're not going to like it. Yeah, Paul Smith was not the fastest artist I've heard.
Right. But he stayed long enough until he could buy the motorcycle.
Right.
I don't remember Paul Smith doing any Rocketeer stuff, and I'm not saying that he didn't, but I don't remember it.
Yeah, I don't remember that. And I remember David Mazzucchelli, whichever one it is.
Kelly.
After he did Batman Year One, made so much money off of that and on royalties that he went and became a road musician for a while. He became a musician. That's what I heard about him. Oh, there's. Yeah. Whoa, no. Yeah, you gotta let Michael Golden was like that. He did work for Michael Golden also was making so much money in advertising that he didn't need to do comics.
Yeah, I remember him made more doing advertising than he did in the comics industry.
Yeah, that advertising. I remember when Michael Golden first was art director at Marvel. I remember him telling us that Marvel at the time, if you designed a logo for Marvel, they paid you $500. Michael Golden's like, in advertising, that's what you get for the initial sketch of the logo.
Right.
They pay you $500 per sketch.
The thing is, if there was a successful company in the United States working on the same model as the French publishers, you could do a work in advertising and then for fun do a graphic novel.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that's what it is, a history book. A history book is, in fact, going to read like a history book. I love history books. Telling me it just read like a history book is not an insult to me.
No, it's not an insult, but there are different ways to approach history. Like the way that
I know
Howard Chaykin approaches is not the same way that Larry Gonick approaches it.
I know, but I like history books in general.
Right. Most people don't, but I understand.
I know, but I do. That's why I say, to me, saying it read like a history book is a good thing.
Right.
He's saying it as a bad thing.
Depends.
So
there's some historians out there that have no problems in letting a little fiction get in the way of the truth and telling a good story too.
Oh, there's plenty of fiction in this, and you also.
Now I'm saying as a historian, not as
but there's also in Chaykin, you have to it's cynical.
Howard is very cynical.
Yeah, that's the part you have to accept too. Like I said, you not only have to be interested in comics history, you have to be interested in Howard Chaykin telling you about
the definition version cynical in the dictionary, and it says see Howard Chaykin.
Right. Yeah. So if you don't want to read a cynical Howard Chaykin version of comics history, then don't. I mean, that's what it is. It's not going to be any different. Got two more. So you can buy the Michael Golden DVD. Oh, okay.
And everything that I haven't read everything, but Two Morrows does really, really good stuff.
Yeah. Chaykin is too sexual now. It was funny. The one time I met Chaykin was just a few years ago. I sat next to him at a con all day, and we were talking. And I mentioned something. I always there's his first volume of Black Kiss. Yeah. There's like an all blowjob issue. I swear the whole issue was about getting blowjobs. And I mentioned something about that to him. And he's like, you know what? I think John Byrne bought every blowjob page I had.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that's my blast case. I grew up on Chrome. Yeah. Black Kiss 2. Black Kiss 2 is what started me back on Howard Chaykin, because I don't think I bought some of Black Kiss 1, but not all of it, because I had just gotten out of Howard Chaykin then, because in like the mid to late 80s, he was doing like DC books, The Shadow and stuff like that.
Right.
And I just wasn't buying any of that. And that's what he did when he was doing comics for a lot of years. And then he did Black Kiss 2, I don't know, 10 years ago now. And I was like, you know what? I want to get back into Howard Chaykin. He's doing indie books, not Marvel or DC.
Right.
And I've been buying all his stuff since then. But I hadn't bought any for like a lot of years. Yeah. Nothing raw in the book. Yeah, there's the only thing raw in the Hey Kids comics book is everybody's feelings about working in comics. That's what's raw. All the characters' feelings. Michael G. did Star Wars. What did he do in Star Wars?
I don't remember. Howard Chaykin worked on the Star Wars poster.
Howard Chaykin did Star Wars.
The first 6 issues of Star Wars.
He did it like over the weekend too. I don't want him to write a comic. Why change? Yeah, I find that annoying too. I would prefer if he used real names, but that's not what people do. They just don't.
Well, also there's a whole liability issue there too.
Nobody in comics ever wants to. It's you know what it is? I've noticed this mindset. It's a freelancer's world, and in comics is a freelancer world, and you never know. If you say the wrong thing about the wrong person, you'll never work again.
Right.
So people who like aren't even working in comics anymore won't name names. They won't say anything. And it's like, dude, you're not working in comics. You'll never work in comics. You can say which person was an asshole to you. It's okay. But then, it's like, I can even remember it was Rob Liefeld put out that Robservations about Heroes Reborn. And one of the things in it was he said, I don't know what it was like at Marvel at the time, but here's how it was like for me. And that inspired me to write a blog about what it was like at Marvel at the time. And so I did, but I actually sent it to Marie Javins to look at it for me, to edit it if she could, just to tell me. And she gave me a few. She's like, "Oh, sure you want to publish this? People might get mad." I'm like, "Nobody cares. Nobody's going to get mad at me. Nobody cares. Nobody cares what I say or do." And sure enough, nobody cared. And I'm like, and that's what it just. Nobody cares. I've said names on this, of people who were jerks to me back in the day. Nobody cares. But when you live in a freelancer, if Howard Chaykin says the wrong thing about the wrong person, they might never hire him again. But they're not hiring me anyway, so it doesn't matter. So but that's how it is when you live in this even when you're as big a name as Howard Chaykin, or as he usually say he's not that big a name. But even those people are afraid, since they've been freelancers their whole career. It's a completely different mindset. That's probably why he's changing the names.
Even though at this stage in his career, everybody knows what they're buying when they hire Howard Chaykin. Yeah,
but like it's built in. It's built in. Yeah, I would like him to write a history book too, but that's not going to happen.
I'm not sure Howard Chaykin is the best person to write a history book.
If the last few months, I've been buying Brandon Graham's Rain Like Hammers and loving it. It's the first thing I've read by Brandon Graham, really. I mean, I've read some stuff here and there, but Rain Like Hammers, I'm now on the Brandon Graham bandwagon. I'll be buying anything he puts out. I really enjoyed Rain Like Hammers. Black Kiss was porn? Yeah, a little bit. It was just European. It wasn't that much porn. If you're not whacking off to it, it's not porn. That's what I say. Rain Like Hammers. Yes, artists are far out weirdos. Remember that. Oh yeah, loved Rain. Still haven't read King City. I'll have to track it down. But like Rain Like Hammers made me a Brandon Graham fan. Story of BK was not strong enough in my opinion. Yeah, like I said, I liked Black Kiss too. I never really bought Black Kiss when I was when it came out and I was 25. I was too cool for Black Kiss too. So, but I'm not too cool for Black Kiss 2. So, monthly comics, they're torture to the artist or fall short.
Depends on the artist.
Yeah, plenty of artists can handle it. I always like to give praise to Charlie Adler, the workhorse of Walking Dead. I mean, holy cow, he got out an issue a month for a decade and a half. He was a workhorse and never got any praise for it. Robert Kirkman got all the praise. I still have Mickey Rat 1 and 2. That was a reference to the Air Pirates comic that Paolo says Comic Crack wants to see. Sean Phillips is also milking the cow. His artist, I don't know if his artist. I've heard a lot of stuff from Comic Crack and La Raza and Sleepy Reader discussing the deterioration of Sean Phillips' art. I don't think it's deteriorated that so much. I just don't think his colorist is as good. That's what I think it comes down to. There we go. Star Wars 38 was the best Michael Golden ever. That's what he's talking about. John Prophet, he was a great story. Okay. Oh, that was the Brandon Graham one, Prophet. There were some great comics back then, which are hard to find now. They were before their time, and the struggle back then is different. Yeah. Digital desktop publishing has made comics so much easier these days, as has my friends and I self-published a comic in 1997 and couldn't get anyone to buy it. And I wish we had Indiegogo and Kickstarter and all that stuff. We could have made it a success then, but just there was just no avenue. You had Diamond and you had conventions, and that was it. And selling through Diamond and Indie Comic in 1997. Whew.
Good luck.
Good luck. We sold 200 copies through Diamond. No, you can't.
I remember Capital City back in the day was pretty good about indie comics.
Yeah, this was post Capital City.
Right.
So. No, I don't think so. I think his son's coloring is adequate, but Elizabeth Breitweiser's colors were spectacular. I think there's a big difference. Other than that, I don't think there's that huge a difference in his. At least I don't see that big a difference in his. I don't see that big a slipping in quality that everyone else seems to see. I don't know what.
Talking about colorists, I don't know if any of you guys read Starstruck by Lane Lee and Michael Kaluta or not, but Lee Moyer did the cover on the most recent volume that came from IDW. Man, Lee Moyer coloring Mike Kaluta is something to behold. It is really, really good.
I got the giant hardcover of Starstruck that came out, I don't know how many years ago now, 5, 6.
Yeah.
It is absolutely beautiful, but the story makes no sense. Wow.
You got to read that story lightly. You got to keep your brain on while you're reading it.
Yeah, well, you could tell it was done at all different times.
It was.
They were thinking about different things when they're doing it. The story just it's not terrible. It just as an overall one volume, the story makes no sense. It was meant to be read here and there in different volumes whenever they could get it out. Any recommendations on Mike Grell's Green Arrow?
The best Green Arrow stuff I remember was the Longbow Hunter series.
Yeah, that's the Grell's. I remember liking that back in the day when it came out, but I haven't read it since then. So
yeah, that's true. I used to read Green Arrow back when Grell was doing it. I haven't taken those things out of a box in years.
In any case, the ongoing series is 60-odd issues of Mike Grell, I think.
Mm. And I'd say I always say that any opinion I have that's over a decade old it's invalid.
Yeah, because I liked it at the time because I was younger.
Yeah. Well, also sometimes all I can remember is I liked it or didn't like it. I don't remember why,
Right.
Unless it's like Green Arrow. I remember liking Mike Grell's Longbow Hunter's Green Arrow. Why I liked it, I don't know. I mean, I can't remember it now, and I never went back and read it. Kansas Thunder, yeah, that's the comic my friends and I put out. I like Jack Kirby. I think Jack Kirby saw it unappreciated now. Art Deco, gory, but back when I was a kid, John Byrne stuff. Yeah, Jack Kirby in the 70s was not beloved by kids. I can remember I discovered John. It was funny. I didn't think I liked Jack Kirby's art for a while, but it turned out what I didn't like was Stan Lee's writing. Because I used to get Marvel's Greatest Comics on occasion, which was the first Kirby I saw, which was the reprints of the FF stuff.
Right.
And it was like the mid-60s FF stuff, issues 60s, like maybe issues, I don't know, 60 to 90, whenever it was reprinted from the 70s. And I would get those and be like, I'd find them completely uninvolving. To this day, I'm not a fan of the Lee and Kirby FF, besides liking to look at it. I know I like to flip through the issues, but not actually read it. And then I think I started reading the Eternals, and I started reading the bicentennial Captain America stuff. And that's when I discovered I really liked Jack Kirby's art. I didn't like Stan Lee's writing. Right. But yeah, Jack Kirby, they used, like I said, at the office, I remember hearing that they used to call him Jack the Hack in the 70s. Because they didn't like it. No one liked his 1970s output. But I liked that stuff. Star Trek needs to be a Suvi.
If they made a movie out of Starstruck, it would probably suffer in the same way that the Larian movies suffered. The source material is so much better than what people that see that on the screen that don't know the comics.
Right.
Think it's just another version of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Whalesville Rocks and Minerals was very good. I enjoyed that one. I did the production on it. That's one that has my name in it. But he really did that. That's sort of an offbeat one. That's Matt Kint and Tony Millionaire and Matt Kint and Adam Polina, but no paranoid conspiracy Matt Kint. It's sort of like fairy tale children's book, fantasy-ish Matt Kint. I've never read anything sort of like that before. Took me 35 years. Yeah, like a lot of people my age who grew up in sort of the mid 70s were not fans. I can remember my one friend saying, I hate Jack Kirby. He draws everything square. He draws Captain America's shield square. That's what kids my age thought. But I liked it. I was the only
The Eternals were being published here when I was 8. And the Eternals were not in continuity with the rest of the stuff. Right. Because the X-Men were in 1980, Captain America was in 1982, and the Eternals starts from 1976. But I liked those a lot. I liked it a lot better than when they reprinted the origin stories of the 1960s.
Yeah.
Because the first time I saw those origin stories, this looks old. And not only Kirby, but also Ditko. Amazing Fantasy number 15 is not a good comic.
Right.
Neither is Fantastic Four number 1.
I read all that stuff first in the origin books, the Fireside origin books. So I liked the old stuff only because, once again, I liked history.
Yeah.
So I liked the history of comics. So I appreciated them as history.
Of course. And it was important for me to read those for the first time. But I understood these are old. And we had next to them a new story. So it was an evolution from the old way that Kirby drew stories to the new stuff that was being done by Romita Jr. and by Mike Zack and John Byrne on Alpha Flight and Frank Miller on Daredevil. But the Eternals, new Kirby stories, I liked those. They did for a very interesting science fiction piece.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. New Gods was a little before my time, so I missed it. But it actually sold well. if you listen to the Robert Birnbaum stuff, it sold well. It's just that so many of them were stolen at the distributor level.
I wish Bob would stop posting on Facebook all the time and just get his book out. I want to read this book.
I know what you mean.
Really do. Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna show up with a briefcase full of cash at his house. Bob, here it is. Just finish the damn book.
Commandy was good. It took me a long time to appreciate Commandy because though I was a Kirby fan, I wasn't a DC fan as a kid. So I only had a little Commandy here and there. And it wasn't until I was older that I read a whole bunch of Commandy and really.
It's very ironic that the Commandy topic comes up when Tim's not here.
Yeah. The Valerian movie I thought was solidly okay. That was about it.
All right, John Carter. Okay. The movie John Carter was intentionally hamstrung by executives at Disney. They did not like I can't remember the director. He's one of the guys that also directed at Pixar.
Okay.
They did not like that a new guy came in from another company and got directorial, control versus somebody that was already established at Disney. They basically did everything they could to intentionally hamstring that movie. That movie set record day sales records in both Russia and China when it was released. That movie did well everywhere except in the United States.
Huh. That's weird. Yeah, I still haven't seen that one, but I've heard good things about it.
It is good.
Huh. A Starstruck in the hands of a
I don't think Starstruck would translate well into being a movie. It's in the medium it works in, which is comics.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
The Valerian movie was all eye candy. That's what's good about it. Starstruck. Yeah. First of all, you have to figure out what Starstruck is about to make it into a movie.
I don't want Tarantino within 500 miles of Starstruck.
Like I said, Eternals was one of my. Eternals taught me a lot about making comics as a kid, because I was figuring out there was things going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about. They'd occasionally talk about in the letters page, but you could tell by like the story direction. That and Omega the Unknown taught me a lot about. There was behind the scenes stuff going on that I didn't know about. Because when a comic with that short of run changes directions 2 or 3 times, it's noticeable to a clever 12-year-old. Took me decades to realize Kirby was a master. Old Steve Ditko. Oh yeah, like a lot of people didn't like Kirby, and if you grew up on 70s Kirby, remember Jack Kirby was rejected at EC Comics, yeah. And they at DC Comics in the 60s, they thought his work was ugly. Yeah, Machine Man, Commandy, New Gods, and Eternal. What I always thought was off-putting about Jack Kirby's stuff, especially his 70s stuff, I always say this, was that he wasn't just creating stories, he was creating whole cultures. So there was. It's like when you meet someone of another culture, sometimes it's tough to connect with them because they're of a completely different culture, And I think that's what reading a Jack Kirby comic could be like to people. It seemed off-putting because there was a whole bunch, like that he was creating whole cultures there that were just crazy and different and like nothing you'd ever seen before.
He was world building visually and. He was world building visually in a kind of the same way that Tolkien did it in prose.
Yeah. And the Stan Lee way of doing things was to make everything relatable like you. And the Jack Kirby way of writing was to create these 9 different cultures that are all fighting each other. Right.
Yeah, even Machine Man, it was made so you would not find him relatable at first, so that you would connect to him at the same time that he was connecting to you.
Andrew Stanton was the director.
I don't want any director to do a Starstruck movie. I don't care if it's Tarantino or anybody else. I don't think it's going to make for a good movie.
Yeah, they could bring back Cecil B. DeMille.
Kirby, there's one.
Might be good for other stuff. I don't know about Starstruck.
I'm gonna have to look up which issue it in. There's one Kirby double page spread of Big Barda and what are her female warriors named? That just is one of my favorite mind-blowing Kirby spreads ever. It's in New Gods or something. I'm gonna have to find that one. I always wanted a poster of that double-page spread. Oh yeah, if you want to see where Steve Rude got his style from, see the Wally Wood inked Kirby from Challengers of the Unknown. You could tell Steve Rude studied that a lot when he was younger, and he said he has. So it's like, it's not like I'm revealing anything
about his influences.
Yeah, he always used to say that, but I never saw it until they came out with a showcase edition of it, and I went, "Wow, he's not kidding."
Yeah.
This looks like Steve Rude, Wally Wood inked by Jack Kirby in the late 50s. Kirby. Oh yeah. Steranko had a lot of it. I loved reading. I had that once again, it was one of those fireside books of Captain America, a thin one it was, but at the end had a Steranko Captain America story. That was, I think, the Hulk one. That was the first Steranko I saw, and it just made me love him. Yeah, I like I said, most people don't like Jack Kirby's writing. I do. Matter of fact, I always go as far as to say I like his writing better than Stan Lee's. I understand Stan Lee is what made Marvel in the 60s. I'm fine with that. But I'd rather read 70s Jack Kirby written, Jack Kirby drawn stuff than I would read 60s Stan Lee Jack Kirby written stuff. That's just my preference. And people like to put down Jack Kirby's writing, but I think it's good. I mean, I like it. Uh-oh. Tim isn't here to get mad at Booster Gold.
All these topics come up that Tim would just jump on, and he's not here. Yeah.
Yeah, Kirby always did strong female characters. I always say, Stan Lee had all his female characters fainting. And, Mr. Jack Kirby got away from that.
I watched a movie last night that had Sonny Chiba in it, the Japanese actor. It's a science fiction movie, and the female lead in that movie reminded me so much of one of those fainting females that you were just talking about. It was annoying. It's like her whole purpose in this movie is just to complain about stuff and get in the way and faint. Yeah.
Invisible Woman, Marvel Girl. They were like no other superheroes fainted when they used their powers,
right?
Like those two did.
Yeah. And you'll notice all the secretaries, Jane Foster, Karen Page, Pepper Potts. They were just pining for the boss. They did nothing. Yeah. And it needs to be said that Kirby didn't actually work on the majority of Thor in the first year and a half.
Yeah.
And Jane Foster is completely Stan Lee invention. I think her first appearance was drawn by Al Hartley. Mm-hmm. But she did nothing. And when Kirby took control of the property, we took control of the story direction, he ended up writing Jane Foster out by proving that Foster is unworthy to be Thor's wife. So in recent years, everybody going, "Oh, Jane Foster is strong. Jane Foster is..." No, she's not.
It was Lady Sif he introduced, right?
It's Lady Sif. It's the strong woman there is Lady Sif. And then it's the other ones that they try to get to Thor. They're not, or to Balder. They're strong-witted. They're opinionated. They just don't have the moral fortitude to do what's right, which Sif has. But the Enchantress doesn't. That's why she becomes the equivalent of a criminal in Asgard, like Carnilla. She's the queen of a demon race, and she loves Balder, but she doesn't want to change to be worthy of Balder. But she's capable of weaving machinations to try to trap Balder into loving her. So she is smart, but Jane Foster was nothing. She was just a secretary.
Yeah. Lots of fainting. If Stan Lee had a hand in your creation and you were a woman, you'd faint if you used your powers.
Mm-hmm.
And why did Steranko produce so little? I think because he was a sort of jack of all trades.
Yeah, he had his hand in a lot of different fires.
Yeah. I'm sure comics didn't pay as much as those other trades did. He was a showman doing magician. He did publishing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If I ever have the chance to meet Steranko, the only thing I want to talk to him about is cars. I know he's a car guy.
He will talk your ear off, fella.
I know he's a car guy because of the cars that he drew for Nick Fury.
Yeah.
He was a graphic designer. I think his influential. I would say Steranko's influence in comics is almost a fluke. Only in that I don't know that he loved comics, and that's why I think I don't know his life story, but from analyzing his I would think that he kind of stumbled into comics.
I think he planned his stumble. I think he engineered it.
He may have.
Yeah.
He may. I don't know if he had or not, but he definitely took to comics with an idea to learn how to do them. Learned under Jack Kirby, and then decided he wanted to take his. But I don't know if he obviously didn't plan on making comics his career. And then he decided, then the comic, because he was only in comics for 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah. Steranko.
I know he came back and did stuff later.
Steranko did definitely love comics. He wrote 2 volumes of comics history.
Oh yes, you're right. I forgot about that. So, he definitely did love comics. You're right. I forgot about that.
He had so many side projects going on. He was a musician. He was an escape artist, a musician, straight stage musician.
He had so many interests.
Right. And
I don't think comics
intimidated a lot of people too, which may have closed some doors for him in terms of the comics market.
Yeah. I don't think he was the easiest guy to get along with.
He rubbed some people the wrong way.
Right.
I can only think of one other artist that had as big an influence with a smaller body of work, and that was Dave Stevens.
Yeah. Probably right. Booster Gold is a lazy millennial. Yes, Kirby thought tough women were great. Granny goodness. Yeah. Is there any Indian movie? Yeah, from a magazine.
I met Steranko. Go ahead.
If you can do movie posters, they paid a lot better than comics.
He didn't do the poster. He did the concept art for Indiana Jones.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Steranko at Heroes Con a few years ago. I had to wait 3 hours in line to do it. Still feel like
Hollywood concept art pays a lot better than comics.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about was the Indiana Jones concept art that he did. He was.
But the funny thing is, it's his comics that he's remembered for. That's what's the funny thing.
But that art that he did for Indiana Jones was spot on. Everything on there is accurate down to the rivets in the guy's belt. You know?
Wow. I would say another one besides David Aja would be, anybody who's very designy would be, what's his name? Wes Craig from Deadly Class.
I don't know.
Deadly Class used to be my favorite. Is that his name, Wes Craig?
I don't know.
All of a sudden, I can't remember. The guy who does Deadly Class, Rick Remender's the writer. Oh boy, but I don't buy it anymore. It's one of the rare indie books I stopped buying. But his art, I've started buying it because his art reminded me of Steranko. At least his layouts and storytelling.
Gotcha.
That's another guy who I think would be a successor to Steranko. Could see where you pulled a little bit of style from him as well. At 18, he could ape Kirby and others very well. Was Steranko that young when he started?
No.
Or is that Barry Windsor Smith who was that young?
Was in his 20s. Barry was real young when he started.
Yeah, his first those X-Men fill-ins. It was definitely 18 or 19 back then.
Okay, So it was Barry Windsor Smith who was 18, not I thought Strankles was pop culture philosophy on here too. Yeah. True, Dave Stevens is awesome. Jim Silkey too. Oh, I remember that name. Jim Silkey.
Jim Silkey works in a very I don't know what words I would use to describe his style. I can picture it in my brain, but I can't explain it to you.
And this was another comic I got this week with the DC Go-Go checks on top. This is the third issue of Geiger by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Post-apocalyptic book about a radioactive guy who somehow survives the radiation whenever others don't. And it's so far a typical post-apocalyptic story. I'm not sure where it's going. It's not bad. I'm enjoying it. But one of the reasons I'm sticking with it is when Jeff Johns and Gary Frank did Doomsday Clock, I said, I'd much rather see these guys do something indie. They're putting so much thought and effort into this Doomsday Clock that I thought was pointless. So because I said that, I'm sticking with this. I want to see what they can do with Geiger. But I'm still not... So far, they're still world building, introducing characters, and it's kind of a typical post-apocalyptic story. So I'll have to see where that one goes. But it's well done. They're both talented, so they're well done. But yeah, the other thing I picked up this week was 4 issues of the Department of Truth. We got issue 6. We got issue 7. We got issue 8. And we got issue 9. And with issue 10, this is now on my pull list. Because I on Hoopla, the library app, I've been meaning to check out this book, but I somehow never did. So I downloaded it on Hoopla, the first trade, and read the first 5 issues. And I was like, and I knew my comic shop had been buying some of these to get the multiple covers or whatever. So I'm like, I bet they have some back issues, and sure enough, they did. So, but this is the one I told you that was about any conspiracy theory that happens, if enough people believe in it, starts to become true. And if the majority of people believe that this conspiracy happened, it actually rewrites history. And that conspiracy becomes true. So the Department of Truth is this government department that tries to tamp down conspiracy theories, so that not too many people believe in them, and that's their job. And meanwhile, there's these other 2 people who have some agenda. You don't know what it was. It's kind of like the opposite of the X-Files. And there's the character we're supposed to relate to is this new guy who they just recruited for the department. And the big reveal at the end of issue 1 is that the head of the Department of Truth is Lee Harvey Oswald. And I liked it. I liked it. It's pretty well done. Who's it by? It's by Tinian and Simmons. That James Tinian the Fourth, I think his name is. I've heard his name before. And Martin Simmons, Simmonds. And it's got this real painterly artistic style. But one of the reasons I'm looking forward to reading these actual comics is there's a lot of double page spreads in here that read across, and reading double page spreads on digital is annoying, because in digital double page spreads have the opposite effect because they're smaller. You have to turn the iPad and get the double page spread the right orientation.
That's exactly why
it's smaller than the regular page.
That's exactly why I don't like reading digital comics on anything other than an oversized monitor, so I can see both pages at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I do, but it's just annoying.
If I try doing that on a cell phone, it would drive me nuts.
Oh, I do. I read them on my iPad. It's usually fine. But for a book with a lot of double-page spreads, it's not. But I only read things I want to check out digitally. Like, I could take that out of the library.
Yeah.
And I also had my comic shop. Well, he's like, "Do you want me to order the first trade paperback for you?" And I was like, "Eh." And I was thinking to myself, maybe I can pick it up. And I'm like, "No, order it," because me saying to myself, "I'll pick up that trade paperback later," means I'll never pick up that trade paperback.
I get it. Yeah,
I've learned that.
Yeah, I have a whole room of books in my house. I'll read these one of these days, and I never get around to it.
Yeah. King Spoyd is here. Yes, I just never do. I always say, I'll check out the trade of that, and I just never do. It's like I've got enough regular comics that I go to the shop every week and pick up comics. So it's like, what am I going to do? Pick up trades?
Mm-hmm.
There are books I get for like birthdays and Christmas that I have off my Amazon wish list. But.
Oh, my Amazon wish list is so large that the UN granted its sovereign nation status.
Yeah, I remember you telling us that.
I know for
like thousands of things.
1,000 items in one list. Yeah. If that tells you anything.
Wow. Yeah. Mine's only got like 30 or 40 items on it, but some of them have been there for 15 or 16 years. I think I have a couple of what's his name? Bernie Krigstein books that have been on there so long they've been out of print for a decade.
Yeah, that's one of the artists I don't know as much about as I probably should. It's kind of a hole in my knowledge.
I only know a lot about Bernie Krigstein because my friend Ed, who I've mentioned before on here, who's I went to college with. I've been friends with all these years. He was also worked at Marvel. He was the one who got me my job at Marvel. Mm-hmm. When he was at Marvel, of course, he's an artist too, so he was always drawing, and he would always ask John Romita for critiques. And John Romita said, "Your work reminds me of Bernie Krigstein. You should look him up." So then it was like, for years, Ed bought everything on Bernie Krigstein he could find. Right. So that's how I know so much about Bernie Krigstein, is because Ed was so into him.
That series you're just talking about that had Lee Harvey Oswald as the head of the department, have they introduced other historical characters in it as well?
They've introduced other conspiracies that must have to do with historical characters, but I'm not sure because they've mentioned that it goes back. Once I read it, like there was a lot of setup in these first 5 issues, and they throw them right into cases and setting up some conflict. Like I think I read about there's a couple issues in the future. They're doing an entire issue or 2 on Bigfoot. Okay. I don't know if he counts as a historical character, but I'm sure and they mentioned something about 1963 changed everything. So something to do with the Kennedy assassination. Mm. Yeah, we're still going for a little while more. But like I said, I really enjoyed it. Department of Truth was good. I'd heard some good things about this, but I meant to check it out, but I hadn't until, like I said, I got the library. I saw it in the Hoopla, and I was like, "All right, we'll borrow that one." That's what I like about digital. I can check things out.
Right.
That's how I checked out some of Marvel's Heroes Reborn, the new stuff, which is, I'm talking to Paolo. I find it solidly okay, but forgettable. Paolo's way too into the continuity to like it. But for me, who doesn't give a rat's ass about the continuity and is going to forget about it immediately after he reads it and will never actually buy it, it's okay to read for free a little bit. I wouldn't recommend buying it.
I'd say that thing is an insult against the original Heroes Reborn, and Heroes Reborn is an insult in itself.
Yeah. I'm not going to argue with you in that context. You're right.
All of that and Crisis and everything else could all have been avoided by having a good editor.
Like I said, Heroes Reborn, the new one, is just like every other story you've read like this, where everything is changed, and there's 1 or 2 characters who are like, something's wrong here.
Yeah,
we have to change it back. No, they're not supposed to be there. And and then they change it back eventually. It's like
the Mandela effect, basically.
Yeah, it's like you've read it before. It's happened before. They've changed everything in whatever universe before, and you know it's going to get changed back at the end. And then they can make specials with all these special, versions of the character.
And the reader doesn't realize that they're getting their money again to read the same thing.
Read the same thing. Architectural foam panels isn't going to argue with Paolo either. He knows that the continuity's a mess. That's what I can't get into the continuity from Marvel, who 20 years ago said continuity doesn't matter and stopped bothering with continuity.
The thing is, continuity today doesn't matter next month, and with the constant barrage of new number ones, especially, here's the thing: back in the day, a comic is not selling well, you cancel it, you do something else, you don't relaunch it.
Right.
In 5 years, okay, you put out something special because you need to renew the trademark.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have any long-term plans for the character. But what's the point of, if the character is failing now, what makes you think that putting out a new number 1 month later is going to improve sales? Especially when it's the same people writing, but for some strange reason that decide that this new number 1, which comes out 1 month after the previous last issue.
It's because the same reader keep buying.
1 year later, and everything changed for no reason. But the story still doesn't have any continuity because it still doesn't have any quality because it's written by the same guy.
Yeah. Oh, and Heroes Reborn is the whole world was changed because the Avengers were never formed. So it's the Squadron Supreme who's the main superhero team of this world. And, things are different. And the Squadron Supreme are a little more fascist, but not really. And it's funny. The only one who remembers the way things were is Blade. And Captain America. The reason there's no Avengers, too, is like Captain America was never dug out of the ice. So it's like Blade went back and dug Captain America out of the ice. And together they're going to change things back to the way they were. Meanwhile, you get all these stories and all these one-shots and all this other stuff about, the Squadron Supreme world. And they're actually, a
couple of the one-shots are actually interesting reads.
They're well,
like you said, inconsequential. You're going to forget about them. They're interesting in the context of this new Heroes Reborn. But the main series is just forgettable.
They're well-crafted comics. They're just pointless kind. It's like for $4, $5, $6 a piece, no thank you.
Yeah.
But they're a good 10-minute read, they're a 5-minute read, and then you forget everything you just read because it's not that interesting. Is the problem?
It's this thing about they decided to renew trademarks on event names. Yeah. That's why this one's Heroes Reborn, and the next one is going to be an X-Men event called Inferno.
Yeah,
which was an X-Men event from 1989.
Big Two keeps selling,
right? I think that's what they should do with it.
I think it's called Heroes Reborn, right? Heroes Return was the one after Heroes Reborn, the first
Heroes,
one.
Heroes Return was when they brought the characters back and made them normal again.
Yeah.
So does this mean that Conan's going to show up in Squadron Supreme now?
He was. Yeah, it's not actually awful. It's just kind of pointless. I mean, they're actually well-crafted comics. They're well-written. They're well-drawn. There's just, if you're a new reader, it might be. If you've never seen this play before, you might like it, but we've all seen this play before.
Also, they're weekly, and spending $4 a week.
Oh yeah, some of the specials are like $5 and $6. It's like,
because they're actually larger. They have 48 pages.
Yeah. But still, you're better off. Who is it? You're better if you really want to read them. Subscribe to Marvel Unlimited and read them in 3 months. That's what I would recommend. Someone on last week says they subscribe to Marvel Unlimited. That's how they keep track of it. They still like the Marvels and they like the. I think that's a really good idea because it's like what $10 a month or something like that, and you can read all the 3-month-old Marvel. So like 3 months from now, you can read here. And if you just want to keep track of Marvels, you just want to read some Marvel stuff, that's the cheapest way to do it, rather than paying, $5. Even if you have to read digital, I would rather like get Marvels Unlimited and read them there than buy the comic.
When this event is over, you're going to have an extra 30, 35 comics in your collection taking up space that you will never read again, nor will you remember why you bought them.
Right. And what I do too, when I see something like that, I add up the price of everything I would be buying. I say to myself, will that really be worth $80 to me? No.
Yeah. Blade as a linchpin. The way that Jason Aaron writes the Avengers is, okay, which character am I going to do the story around this time?
And yes, Blade is the linchpin. It's baffling to me.
But it's not a story that you would do with this character. Like the vampire storyline, which is advancing, like the Squadron Supreme storyline was set up, it didn't advance, and now it's this all of a sudden. But it doesn't have anything to do with the way they were portrayed in the Avengers. So now they're doing this, and it's whatever. So it's like, I expect the vampire storyline to be the same, and if they're using Blade now as the motivator of this story, they're not going to have him do the same thing with the vampires.
Yeah, I found it weird that Blade, but to me, Blade is still Tomb of Dracula Blade. I haven't really read any Blade beyond Tomb of Dracula. So to me, it's strange, but to people who've been reading Blade all these years, I guess it's not.
This Blade is a mixture of the Midnight Suns Blade and movie Blade.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there. I mean, like I said, I bootlegged those comics, so keep it under your hat.
Yeah, that's another thing that bugs me these days. There's people that think that you have to like everything.
Yeah.
I understand. Being open-minded is a good thing.
Yeah.
But it's also okay not to like every single thing that exists. It's
sure.
Okay.
The problem is many readers are now wired with the idea that all the comics are connected. So if you don't buy one series, you're missing out, which isn't true. For those people that insist on buying every tie-in to an event, the tie-ins actually had nothing, or at best they had something that is interesting in itself, but inconsequential to the whole.
I see. I'm so old and jaded, I have to do the opposite. I have to convince myself not to hate everything. In order to read these Heroes Reborn, I had to convince give it, just read them with an open. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to love them. You can just read them and see what they're about. Because otherwise, I'd just be like, I don't even want to read that.
The other problem is
not even for free.
Using a wrestling analogy again, this is like the early '90s WWF, where you had all the wrestlers cutting promos on the regular shows. But the final battle happened in the pay-per-views. So if you're reading the Avengers, you have to stop reading the Avengers because the big battle is in one of the event books, not in the Avengers, even though it was set up in the Avengers.
It's almost like that would be pay-per-view, isn't it?
And Kevin Feige's plan seems to be working quite well. It has nothing to do with these comics, but he can pick and choose what he wants from them. Yeah. Exactly. I'm about to drop my whole pull list into the East River and just start hitting the gym with event. I'm not sure what one has to do with the other, but yeah.
Well, you can use the comics that you're not reading anymore and lift weights with them. Paper is actually quite heavy.
Yes, it is. Especially when you put it all in boxes and move them around. They get really heavy.
Yeah, that would.
Okay, now that we had a rant about Heroes Reborn, are we done ranting?
Yeah, I think we can call it a night now. We've been on for a good 2:43.
Mm-hmm. Oh God, yeah, it has been a while.
It's just about coming up on 9 o'clock. Unless anyone has some final thoughts. Besides, there's another Batman event coming out. I think I'll point that out. for no reason except I was reading it today. Batman Fear State. When was the last time there was not a Batman event?
Yeah. At least that one doesn't seem to be about the Joker or Harley Quinn.
No. It's about the Scarecrow.
Amazing. They remember that the Scarecrow exists as a villain. Everything has been about the Joker in the last few years.
That's the one thing that drives me nuts about Batman. It's just so Joker-centric.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm okay never having. I'm okay never reading another Joker story the rest of my life.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And if some other new character, what was his name? The Magistrate.
But then they have I'm going to come up with a new Batman villain who's going to be even more dangerous than the Joker and Poison Ivy and Two-Face combined.
Well, you know what he did? He found a cache of Batman armor and weapons.
No.
So made himself and rents himself out to the Gotham police.
I'm going to be the anti-Batman, and I'm going to prove I'm better than Batman by breaking Bane's back.
Yep.
So he's Grant Morrison.
All righty. Well, I guess we'll sign off. So you guys all have a good night out there.
Bye.
It was nice talking to these two. Nice reading everybody's comments.
Sayonara.
And we'll catch you all next time. Bye-bye.